Hello, friends, and welcome to the Nugget Climbing Podcast. This is Stephen Dimmitt, and my guest today is Kyle O'Meara. This was a really fun episode for me. I started climbing in Leavenworth, Washington, and Kyle was very heavily involved in the development of the area. He put up a lot of first ascents. He put up a lot of the boulders that I would walk past and marvel at and dream of climbing someday. He's done a lot of first ascents, and he's done a lot of development, not only in Washington, but in Tahoe and many other areas. This guy climbs hard. He's a total lifer. He's climbed V13. He's climbed 14B. He's still going hard in his late 30s, and he is also a successful climbing coach. He's coached a number of different teams around the country, and he spent several years coaching in Salt Lake City at the Momentum Climbing Gym. Some of the kids that he coached, who are no longer kids, include Dalton, Palmer Larson, and Nathanial Coleman. And of course, Nathanial Coleman is one of just 4 individuals representing our country at the Olympics this year. So Kyle is not only an impressive climber, but a very successful coach, and he's just an amazing guy. He's become a friend of mine, and he's just a great human being. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and we really just walked through Kyle's story. We talked about his trajectory through climbing, some of the first ascents that really stand out, some of the most meaningful routes that he's done, and we dug into some of the characteristics and themes that he noticed amongst the kids that he coached that were some of the more successful ones. So I think many of you will find that interesting. And if any of the stories that he shared about climbs that he did, we talked about some of those first ascents and films. If you're curious about any of that stuff, I did link to several short films in the show notes. So there's a great film of Kyle doing the first ascent of the Crown Jewel and uncut footage of him doing the low start to that and some of the other ones that we talked about. So be sure to check that out at thenuggetclimbing.com. If you would like to support the show, I would very much appreciate your patronage. I use Patreon. That is the main way that I have been getting support for the show, and that's what keeps the show going at this point. You can sign up to be a patron for $5 per month. There are a couple tiers that are higher than that, but $5 will get you in the door and will get you access to follow-up episodes with some of the guests that I've had on the show, some bonus content there. And you can get your questions featured in episodes. You'll hear some of those featured towards the end of this conversation. You can sign up for Patreon at patreon.com/thenuggetclimbing, or you can just go to the website at thenuggetclimbing.com and click on the support the podcast button at the top of the page, and that'll take you there as well. I really appreciate all the support so far. It really is a dream come true for me to have your support and to be able to continue the podcast. And I'm really excited about it. I've got a long list of guests that I can't wait to talk to. And sometimes it feels like the weeks can't go by fast enough because I just want to get to all these exciting guests. Anyway, a lot of good stuff coming. But in the meantime, please enjoy this conversation with boulderer, route climber, climbing coach, route setter, and all-around amazing guy, Kyle O'Meara.
Cause, no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
Heavy microphones.
Yeah.
It's like the real deal.
I've had 2 or 3 people be like, do I really have to hold this? I'm going to get pumped. I'm supposed to climb.
Come on.
I'm supposed to climb tomorrow.
Come on.
I'm like, you climb 5:15, Jonathan. You don't need. You can hold a microphone for like an hour. Yeah.
So
good.
I'll train it up.
That's the mindset.
Hold the mic.
Yeah.
Drop the mic.
Well, this is my sound check question. Even though I'm not sound checking anymore, I'm going to ask you it anyway. What did you eat for breakfast this morning?
This morning I ate some Love Crunch granola, mixed berry with a banana in it.
Okay.
Yeah. And lovely splash of flax milk on there. So.
Flax milk, okay. I've been curious what you eat because all I've seen you eat at the crag so far is fruit and then day-old pastries and baked goods from the River Rock. I haven't seen you eat anything else.
I always have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich
that
I eat with my banana usually. And yeah, I can't resist those day olds. For whatever reason, I've got in a bad habit of like stopping at River Rock on the way to cragging days, which
Is it a bad habit? I mean, you're super lean, you're looking strong, you're climbing well.
Maybe
You get to eat
habit.
delicious baked goods. It seems to all be working for you.
Yeah, maybe. Could be the start of the decline from the peak, though. You never know. Going on a couple months now of this bad habit, quote unquote. I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing.
Okay.
At least there's some value to like your heart feeling happy, and nice pastries are good for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Any other staples for you in your diet?
I try to eat a lot of vegetables, and I have kind of dabbled in a lot of experimentation surrounding my diet, whether that is trying out full-on veganism for a period of time, or leaning more towards like a vegetarian thing, so I still eat some eggs. And then I kind of like did the whole pescatarian thing for a little while, where it's mostly vegetarian, some eggs and some fish sometimes. I kind of try to listen to my body.
Mm-hmm.
To some degree anyway, and like if I feel like I need something else, I'll do it. And if I go to dinner at someone's house and there's like red meat, which I don't really eat, I'm not really the type that's like, yeah, I don't eat that. I'll kind of like be like whatever. And I guess that comes from the mentality of like, well, life's too short to like fully restrict myself. And I'm also a fairly lucky person, I think, to where most what I eat doesn't seem to affect how I feel or like my output that much from what I can tell.
I was going to ask that. Have you noticed any big changes either way, good or bad, with any of these experiments?
I feel like no matter what I try, I go through this little period of being like, wow, I feel better. I have more energy. Unless I'm maybe consuming too much food. That's the only time I can feel like, oh, I'm like tired or lethargic, or I don't feel great or something like that. And I don't know if it's like what I'm eating or if it's how much I'm eating. There's like a fine balance to that, and something that I pay a lot more attention to in the past year or two, just to be aware of like, what am I eating? How am I feeling myself? Like, how much does it matter? And it's cool to experiment because it's something I'm not an expert in, but there's obviously a lot of like layers and value to, how do you feel your body? But I'm definitely lucky in the sense that I can go like a year of being like totally vegan and then eat like a hamburger and ice cream and be like totally fine. Like it doesn't upset my stomach. I don't like feel wrecked. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been observing you keeping a food diary. I think that started because of sleep.
Yeah.
Have you learned anything from doing that, or where did that come from?
So yeah, I've never struggled to sleep in my life, and for the past few months I have. For some reason I haven't been able to stay asleep through the night. So I think a lot of it stems from just my mind feeling busy, and I've been like really stoked on a lot of things and excited about new changes in my life and this new place that I'm in. Having moved to St. George and starting a new climbing team, and just a lot of like new stuff happening. Excited about climbing. Surprise, surprise. And I'll wake up at like 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning and not go back to sleep. And it was just this like nasty pattern I got in somehow. And I was like surprisingly still feeling okay. Like quite good. Like I was like, man, I feel physically great. I'm not sleeping at all. Like what is happening? And I started to kind of question, like, am I like going through some manic episode or something like that? Like, how do I have so much energy and such a like excited, busy mind, and yet I'm like not resting. I'm not refueling or recharging my muscles and stuff, especially for like what my output looked like every day. Like a lot of social energy, a lot of emotional energy, a lot of physical energy every day. So in an effort to be like, all right, I got to figure this out, I just started kind of like trying out different sleep aids like melatonin. I've been trying like valerian root, magnesium, things that whatever I've heard like this should help. And so I'm like, why not try it? And one of my good friends was like, you should, like, what are you eating? What time do you eat dinner? Like, these things she brought to my attention as maybe that's one of the reasons that you're like struggling to sleep. Her initial thought was like, maybe you're not eating enough. So your body's waking you up in the middle of the night because it needs something. And you don't even necessarily like identify that as I'm hungry. My body needs it, but like it's still happening. So yeah, I started keeping a food journal, long story short, to make sure that I was A, eating enough food, and A, eating enough, or B, eating enough of the right foods. Mostly just making sure I got enough like carbohydrates and protein in my diet, because I don't know, I kind of always thought like, yeah, I do like all right, but I wasn't actually sure. I've never really kept track of like, this is how much I'm eating, this is whatever.
Yeah.
I don't love doing that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like it makes me more conscious in like maybe a negative way. I'm not like, I don't know. I don't like counting calories for myself because it makes me, I don't know. I don't like
crazy.
Yeah, I just don't like to try to control that. I like it to be like a natural thing, and you know, that's kind of the story of my life. I like to like feel it and listen to my body and like act on that rather than read this thing and say, this is how you're supposed to do it, and here's the rule, here's the answer. You know, I just think it's different for everyone, and
That's cool.
yeah. It is cool.
Yeah, that's a good approach. Have you had any revelations from the food journal? Have you changed anything or any discoveries there?
You know, I haven't changed a lot. I think the first week or so that I kept track of it, I was really just trying to make sure, or I just wanted to see, like, how much am I eating? How many calories they're about? I did have like 2 different days where I like got to the end of the day and was like, oh yeah, I did really well today. I ate a lot, and went back and was like, wow, I ate like 2,100 calories.
Whoa.
And like, I guess like that was neat to be aware of the fact that some days I can just not eat that much, and certainly not enough for like the amount of output that I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have days where it's like, yeah, I get up early, I like spend some time doing this or that, and then go climbing for like 6 hours, and then stop at the gym and like lift weights, and I've hiked 4 miles that day, and you know, like just at the end of the day I'm like, oh, I probably like expended a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So I guess the next step would be like, how do I monitor how much energy I'm actually burning in a day? I don't even know if that's like something I could figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably more than 2,100 calories.
Definitely more than that on any given day.
Yeah, especially a cathedral sport climbing day.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll be curious to hear how that evolves, and if you make any changes that help, or if you notice anything, or if you just continue to feel the same no matter what you do. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure that it's a big picture that, you know, when we look at the ebbs and flows and everything about our life, from our performance to even just our motivation and the way we feel about everything, you know, I'm sure that what you're consuming and what you're putting out there like really heavily weighs on that. Is it something that I can fully control or fully be aware of? I don't think so, because again, that just changes every day, and I can never, no matter what, plan for tomorrow I'm going to put this much energy out there. Right.
Tomorrow I'm going to have like this demand put on me. You know, next week I have to navigate that. Like, that's just not life, and that's cool. I guess I kind of like that it's always a surprise.
Listen to your body, and when it tells you to go get baked goods at the River Rock, then that's what you gotta do.
That's by default, because, you know, I go in there with like, I like this breakfast sandwich they have, because it's a lot of fuel for the day, which helps me kind of like, you know, eat a bunch rather than like a bowl of granola, which is kind of like not gonna, it's probably burned up by the time I get to the crag. So I like this breakfast sandwich, and it's not expensive at all, so it just tricks me into thinking this is a good idea. And then by default, if I show up and there's good day-old bakery items which are half price, I can't resist being like, well, that's like close to free. And that would be a perfect little sugar blast for later, or a sending treat if that somehow happened.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen in sport climbing very much, turns out. Maybe that's just me.
Well, I love that. It reminds me of like college, being in Bishop, like going to Schatz Bakery and going to the day old section and just raiding it, you know, like all of us just stocking up on the most calorically dense, sugary things we can find.
Yeah. It's always a good idea when you're on the road. I don't know about living down the street from River Rock and being like, well, I'm going climbing again every day. I guess I'll stop there.
It seems like it's working so far. I am really excited. I don't know if I've told you this, but it's been really fun to get to know you a little bit more this season. So I started climbing in Leavenworth, basically. Mm-hmm. You know, my early climbing was in the school climbing gym at Western Washington University, but it was all my outdoor climbing early on. The first few summers and outdoor trips was mostly in Leavenworth. Mm-hmm. And it was that first Sheridan guidebook. And I don't think I've told you this, but you and like Johnny G and like Kelly and Cole, there was like this kind of legendary mythical status around all of you guys as I was like running around the forest trying to repeat some of your boulders.
In the summer.
In the summer.
Those days.
Back when I literally didn't know any better.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny how we used to all just be like, what? Temps?
It doesn't
like,
matter.
In the sun and like, these V4s are so hard. Those were my earliest climbing days. Same thing.
Yeah.
Summertime in Leavenworth.
I want to hear about that. So that's what I'm really excited to dig into. I would love to, and feel free to start at the beginning if that's what makes the most sense, but I would love to just have you describe what life was like discovering climbing in Leavenworth. Everything was new. There was no guidebook yet, putting up all those classic problems that everyone, you know, tries to go repeat nowadays.
Yeah.
What was it back then?
That was like, just like looking back, it's like I was living the dream, truly. So not only was that, oh, this is a neat discovery of Leavenworth, it was like, you know, hugely like my discovery of climbing, and those early days like really shaped just who I am as a climber and like what climbing means to me. So I feel really lucky to have found the way or whatever in climbing through just like that process of discovery and like just the unknown. And it just seemed different that back then because, you know, we were the only ones out there and we were just walking around and like, I didn't know what, you know, going to try the V8 was like. It was like, we just found rocks that we thought, oh, there's a neat hold. Oh, here's like another one. Maybe we could like find the way to the top and scrubbing the rocks and just, you know, it was seemingly just kind of like a pure way of being motivated or driven by something that wasn't like, I want to climb harder, I want to be better. It was very much like we just liked being outside, and you know, that whatever Chris Sharma mentality I think resonated really deeply with me. And the like, you know, how do you grade something? It doesn't really matter, it's different for every person. Like that, carrying that into like our process of discovering things and establishing these boulders or whatever, which again, people like thank us for that, and I'm like, we were literally just having the time of our lives and hanging out in the woods. Like, it wasn't like
you're welcome, I guess.
We weren't like trying to like make climbing for other people, and you know, back then we were like, dude, there was another person bouldering in forest land today. Like, can you believe it?
For people listening that haven't been to Leavenworth, forest land these days, I mean, it's probably the most popular zone in Leavenworth, up Bicycle Canyon.
Probably.
And yeah, it's very rare that you're there without other parties.
Yeah. I mean, I feel, again, just so lucky to have been living there at that time. So, like, I started climbing because a friend of mine was into it, and I was 19 years old, and I started climbing because he took me to Exit 38 and gave me an ATC and told me don't let go of this hand and give some slack when I'm going up. And here, I'll just climb and you'll figure it out. I'll talk you through it. And I'm like, and he like stepped off the railroad tracks onto the wall. And I was like holding this thing and kind of was like sort of scared, but kind of trusted him enough to be like, I guess he's not going to fall. So I belayed him on like a 10B or something like that. That was my first belaying experience. And I think I top roped that day. And I was like, Bryce, this is awesome. Like, I'm getting shoes tomorrow. And he was like, yeah, that's what everyone I take climbing says. And like, no one ever does. But the next day I went to REI and got some shoes. And man, it was like love at first feel for me. I just like dove in and was like, this is like the coolest thing. It was this, you know, like a lot of people like, oh, it's a cool reason to be outside. And I just really liked the connection between like my mind and my body and nature. And it just felt like a natural thing for me to do. So I got shoes right away. I started climbing at Merrimore Park all the time.
Where's that?
It's in Redmond, Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you grew up in Issaquah?
I grew up in Issaquah, Washington, yeah, or just outside of it. That was in the Issaquah School District, so.
A little closer with the mic, if you can.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no worries.
So yeah, Merrimore Park was like a kind of a learning grounds for me, where it's an outdoor structure in this big park, and it's absurd to me that it's just an unmanned thing. The walls are pretty tall. They're probably like 40 feet at their tallest point on some of the spires, and they're fully bolted with these weird glue-in bolts. And it's like unsupervised, so you can just walk in and start climbing. And
whoa,
yeah, so
it's like plastic climbing holds, or
they're cement walls, so they're like, some of them are made out of just straight concrete with like shaped edges and pockets and stuff.
Huh.
And then I wonder what it's like now. It must be kind of polished.
Yeah, probably.
And then some of the walls are like fully brick walls with like rocks inserted into them, like real pieces of rock. And so going there at first, I was just climbing around and traveling around and kind of like free soloing to the top. I kind of learned there that, oh, I like climbing high and climbing risky, and like I shouldn't have been doing that, but I was, you know, that's what the people were doing. They'd like free solo to the top. And there was certainly a Merrimore Park locals scene of these dudes that were just next level. And I was, you know, looked at all of them and was like, I'll never be able to do that.
In hindsight, how hard were they climbing?
So some of the boulders that, you know, it's like endless eliminates, right? It's like a spray wall type situation.
Okay.
And then, you know, there's like, texture for feet type rules. It's like you can't stand on the ledges. You know, it was fully like gymmed out, you know. And among those people that I was watching and looking at in awe were Joel Campbell was one of them.
Okay.
And Jessica Campbell was one of them. This guy named Ben Schroep. So some like legendary Washington folks and like the true locals. And you know, when I started climbing, they were already at this kind of advanced elite level. And yeah, I just remember even watching like Jess do some of those boulder proms and being like, wow. Like I was like, you know, they use their heel. That's crazy. And yeah, I learned a lot from watching them and trying their boulder proms that they showed me that they had made up. And, you know, looking back, a lot of them are like V4 or something like that. And they were ungraded and, you know, they never talked about that. So that was another thing. I think that early in my climbing days, it wasn't really about any grades for me ever. Obviously, it was cool when I started climbing in the gym to be like, oh yeah, I want to do the next number. But I think that quickly like lost its luster, and I pretty quickly understood that like, oh, that just doesn't matter, and it's like kind of all over the place. After I spent a whole summer climbing at Merrimore Park and the winter set in Washington, I did find the climbing gym. I went to the Vertical World in Redmond. And that like totally opened my eyes to a new world, because there was these numbers now that I wasn't really aware of. And I did have that early climberism, like climb the grades, like, okay, I did a V5, I want to do a V6 now. And And in those days, this was like 2002 or 3. Like, I don't know how much the gyms have evolved into being like softer or whatever, but back then, I swear, those V's were like really hard to attain. And I think that, Tyson was the head setter at that time.
Tyson Shaney.
Yeah, Tyson Shaney. And so I met him in some of my earliest days as a climber and like tooling around in the gym. And I would session with his team kids. And that was my first introduction into like, wow, there's a climbing team. And Tyson was like a hugely influential character in my climbing. Just in, he didn't do anything like ridiculously significant or anything, but he did like step out of his way and like shared some of his perspective on like climbing and just what it's all about really in there, that like I was so eager to learn everything that I could, that like a lot of his thoughts and perspectives just like resonated with me, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I didn't know it at the time, but like he really planted the seed for being like a real mentor, a coach in climbing, and like that one day that would be something that like meant the world to me. At the time, like I said, it didn't cross my mind that I was like, I want to be a climbing coach, because I just was like learning how to do it.
Yeah.
But it was cool to like, whatever, years and years down the road to have become whatever climber that I became, and to look back on those earliest days and realize like, I do want to share this with like the next generation and in this special way. And so it was cool to have the opportunity to like step into that arena when I did.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely want to circle back to your coaching, and I have a number of questions about that. But I want to ask a little bit more about Leavenworth. How did you make your way out there for the first time? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine that I had met at the Vertical World, actually. His name was Ryan Jacobson. He was super into climbing. He's the one that actually showed me the movie Rampage.
Nice.
And
Nice.
yeah, and I
Classic.
mean, yeah, classic. It truly changed my life. Watching that movie was like this gateway to, wow, that's what climbing could be like, and like, how cool is that to get to climb new problems and stuff like that. And obviously watching Chris Sharma looking heroic and yelling and sending the gnar was just inspiring. So Ryan showed me Rampage, and Ryan had been to Leavenworth a number of times, and he's like, oh, it's great, we got to go sometime. So he took me out there for my first time, and I think we went to Barney's Rubble, and we went to Forest Land, and we went to Swiftwater. And at the time, those were sort of the only zones that were there. I guess Mountain Home Road was there as well, but a lot of those little side satellite areas hadn't been, if they had been climbed on, which I'm sure a lot of them had been, they weren't on the map really yet. So it was neat to go out there, and I just had no idea how good it was. Even going there, I was just a new climber, so I was like, cool, sweet, problems, like this rock is neat. But it didn't like occur to me that I was like in this world-class zone that I don't think I realized that for years. I
can relate to that, actually.
Yeah.
Like you start traveling more, and you're like, wow, my home where I started, like that was actually really good climbing.
Yeah, it was a cool realization the year that I like figured that out. And it was kind of the first year that I really traveled for climbing outside of the Northwest. I climbed in Washington and climbed in Leavenworth, and really kind of started to get my roots as a climber. And what graniteering looked like and felt like to me was like born there. And then I pretty quickly, that maybe 2 years into climbing, I went to Squamish for like a 3-month trip in the summer, and that was life changing, because that's where I learned like, wow, people live in cars and like climb all the time. I'd never seen that before. And I got to meet some of the, the forest masters up there and see, again, like the way, quote unquote.
There was probably a lot more information there, like guidebooks or established problems and things like that.
Yeah, there was. And that was just that was the first time I had dove into just full-time climbing and just camping out and like full dirtbagism. I survived on like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and peanuts. Because like fruits and vegetables are too expensive in Canada. But that was a wild summer, and just, again, it truly changed my life. I remember getting there and like projecting all the V4s, and the Squamish V4s are, there's a bunch of them and they're really cool, and they're not straightforward, easy climbs.
Right.
And I was wearing moccasins exclusively. So looking back in hindsight, I don't know how we were heel hooking up all those slopey arrettes and stuff, but
right.
But I didn't know any better. We just downsized. And that was, a world-class area that, again, I still didn't really make me realize how good Leavenworth was until in Squamish I got to meet some of my best friends that are still some of my best friends today, this crew from Reno. And specifically my good friend Joel Zaire. I met him that summer in Squamish, and we had a great time climbing together. I was 21 years old. So this was old me, young me rather. And I really like pushed myself as a climber just by nature there that summer. Climbing with Joel, he was a lot better than me. He grew up on a climbing team, and he was, I was like kind of climbing the ranks or whatever, but I think when I started climbing there, I was like V4ing, and then by the end of the summer, I think I did my first V8 that same summer, and so
wow.
it felt like huge progression.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, something. And it's whatever, I was still just a new climber, and but that like trip really got the ball rolling for me to be like, okay, this is a life thing for me. I dove deeper into climbing in Washington and, climbing in Gold Bar with those guys. And again, it was just a natural thing to like walk around and find these climbs and brush the moss off and like find the way. It's interesting to look back on that motivation, because it's like I wasn't trying to like seek first ascents or anything. But it was just like a by nature thing. I think I was always, in my early days, I think I liked to repeat things better, because it was like, I know it's possible, and like, here's the way you're supposed to do it. But it was cool to learn so much about climbing just by like doing it, rather than someone like showing me how to do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Was it all bouldering back then? I mean, your first day was top roping at exit 38.
Yeah.
Was it all bouldering for the next few years after that?
I sort of started as going rope climbing more, just because that's what I had known. Once I had seen Rampage and started to go bouldering, I did like dive pretty deeply into that. And I would sport climb a little bit occasionally, but I definitely had the like boulderer ego thing where I was like kind of scared, and I would get pumped, and like it wasn't super enjoyable to go sport climbing and get like owned on the 12A or whatever when I was climbing just V's and boulders. But I did boulder pretty exclusively for 4 years or so.
Okay.
And then I started to feel this kind of, oh man, new climbing is fun to me. Like, I like to do something new. For some reason, that was something that I adopted like really early in my climbing days, of like, if I can do a new climb to every day that I climb, then like that's a successful day to me.
Like new, something you haven't done, or like first ascent?
Something that I haven't done.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. Like difficulty aside, like it can be V0. If I climb something I've never climbed before, that to me is a successful day. And I think 4 years in, I started to be like, okay, like maybe now if I do like new moves in a day, like that's successful. Because I was, we were obviously still finding new climbs all the time, and there was more stuff that I had never done, but it was harder to do that visiting these same areas. So that's when I stepped back into sport climbing, because I was like, there's a whole bunch of new moves on this wall.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that came into play more when you were still living in Washington?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I started to kind of switch seasonally. So if it was colder out, I would prefer to boulder, and if it was warmer out, bouldering's less fun. And so to me, and so I would go sport climbing at exit 38 in the summertime. And again, it was just a whole new, like a huge arena of moves that I had never done. So, and it was just a new, it felt like time to do something different. And it was motivating as someone who bouldered a little bit more to try these sport climbs and be like, the moves are not hard for me to do, but it's really a tough puzzle to put these together. But, I dove in and wanted to do a 513, so I spent a bunch of time trying to do my first 513, which was chronic.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little exit 32.
Kind of world famous.
Yeah. Is it?
I mean, I think so. I think it's like...
It's amazing, yeah. It's definitely Washington famous.
It's Washington famous. Maybe not world famous.
Yet.
But I think it would be a great route anywhere.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah, and that was a fun one to do because it was so not bouldery, I guess. It's like 80 feet long, and pretty much every single move is like V3. Maybe there's a V4 move in there. But yeah, it didn't really like suit my strength. And so that was my first kind of transition into like, this is what it means to try a sport climb that's hard. And I don't know how many, I have no idea how many efforts it took me, but it was like days long endeavor. And yeah, it was, I guess it's neat to look back and be like, my first 513 was the 8A and not like a 13A.
Yeah.
And that was just by accident and by default. And the fact that like, this is the classic here, like you should do that one. And the locals like have it so ruthlessly wired that they were like warming up on it.
They all just make it look easy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was neat to go through the evolution of like, I projected that thing and I had to earn it. And then one day I also was like the local that like I have warmed up on chronic before.
Yeah. I love that. I can relate to that. At Smith Rock, the equivalent is churning in the wake. That's the Smith Rock version of chronic that everyone just can chuck a lap on. All the turbo locals, we call them. I'd love to ask, as far as putting up first ascents, as far as discovering new boulders, not having any sense of what anything was graded or not even caring that much. Like, what are some of the climbs what are a few that really stand out to you looking back, either because they really challenged you, because they were just so amazing, or one of a kind, or, I mean, take this whatever direction you want. But yeah, what are a few of the big highlights looking back in those early days?
Oh man, I got a lot of highlights. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I do have, as I get older and the longer I climb, I get more like into tinkering with things, like keeping track of things and like climbing journal type things. I never used to do that, and I kind of wrote it out with like, I have a great memory. I don't forget things, and it was true. Like if I climbed something, I remembered, and I would remember the beta and very clearly, very vividly remember my experience with it. But in the past 6 years or something, I've started to keep track of like, this is where I climbed, this is what I did that day, just to like, for my own reference of like, this is new. So in that list of lists, I have a list of like, these are the best climbs of my life.
Yes.
These like, inspired the best moments in climbing for me. And some of those are boulder problems I got to put up, or a lot of them are like second descents that I was involved in the like process to like discover it, figure it out, watched so-and-so do the first descent or whatever, and I got to follow suit. But in some of my earliest days as a climber, I did get, for some reason, I liked boulders that were like really nice looking, and by default, for some reason, I liked the ones that were taller than not.
Yeah, you're known for that.
Yeah,
you've got a lot of high balls to your name.
Used to be pretty like snobby or something in terms of like, I don't like the way that one looks, I'm not going to bother. And I hated to like be elitist or whatever, but I was like kind of I was kind of selective And like, I'm not going to climb on it unless it's like strikingly beautiful to me, unless I'm drawn to it. And like, whatever, low balls with big numbers were like the opposite of that for me for a long time. Now as I'm older, that's not the case. I kind of like a low ball. It's like pretty fun. It's like more about the movement and like the fact that like, this experience with whatever climb is like gonna be neat. It's all about your frame of mind in some way, and what I look for is like a challenge and something that is like neat and whatever, provides an experience of some sort. On that note, in my earliest days, I think the most notable climb I can think of is a climb in Index along the river that I did, as far as I know, do the first ascent of. It's called Built to Last. And it's just on like the most incredibly river sculpted granite imaginable. And
I don't think I know this one.
yeah, it's consequently really tall.
Okay.
There's another boulder across the river from it that we had climbed on originally. I think it has a climb called J High on it.
Okay.
It's like a jump start problem. And yeah, looking across the river, there's this huge face that like looms above the bad landing and the water, depending on the river level. And yeah, I got pretty stoked on that. And so that one is one of the best like first ascents of my life, I think, because it was one of the first really tall boulders that I did get to do the first ascent of, and it's just like super beautiful. It's in a place that just meant a lot to me because it just taught me a lot about who I am as a climber and what I look for. And that climb it's stunningly beautiful. It's cool. It's on the cover of that Central Washington guidebook or something that Pablo wrote.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
How difficult is it?
It's maybe like V8-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. It has like, it's maybe like index 12A.
Polished, slippery granite. And super technical.
There's a really hard first move that's like a big move to a big rail, and then it's like literally like 512.
I'm going to start grading everything in index grades.
Yeah, I would like that. I would like that. It's all about perspective. You
It's
know?
like index 12B.
Yeah.
514 somewhere.
Yeah, at least V10.
What are some others from that list? The best of the best.
The Crown Jewel is at the top of the list for me, for sure, as a boulder problem. That one's in Lake Tahoe, above the Phantom Spires, and
It's a great video of that.
yeah, there's a cool video.
I'll share that in the show notes for people.
Yeah, Dane Henry was a magic maker. He actually makes ski videos, and that was one of his first times making a climbing video. I think it was his second one, actually.
That fits. I can see the ski video, like creative element of that. You know, was he in a helicopter or did he have a drone back then?
They just had all the tricks, man. It was overwhelming, actually.
I'm so curious.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, man, you want to like shoot this video? Do you have any ideas of like cool climbs? And I was like, oh, yeah. Now I got this really neat one. And I was like, I don't know if I can do it again. It took me like 5 days to do it. And it was, oh man, that one just like meant a lot to me. It's in like the coolest arena. And it was just a interesting time in my life. And I had just got back from a big road trip, and I got shown that boulder and was like, whoa.
I want to describe it. From what I remember from the video, it's a pretty tall V10, and it just looks like this perfect block that just fell out of the sky and landed on top of a mountain. It's just the most insane setting you can possibly imagine. It is.
I don't know how that happened. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
And the face, the side of the boulder that the problem is on is like quite steep, and it's just covered in this really vibrant green lichen. And so when you walk up to the boulder, you're like, oh my God, like that's just insanely beautiful. Even if you weren't a climber, it's cool looking. Yeah. And it there's kind of good features on it. So you're definitely like, there's a climb there, like for sure. But it is, classic experience with a climb where you're like, that's neat. I want to do it. It's going to be hard. I got to figure it out. And then it took some effort and some patience. And then when Dane asked me to do that video, I was kind of like, oh, right on. Like, I'm stoked to show that one to the world. It is like a notable one. And I went out there and they had this huge boom crane and like one of those big octocopter drones, and like it was like a film crew. So I was kind of like, whoa, I'm slightly overwhelmed. Like I didn't know it was going to be a production like this, but you know, I was like, whatever. You're like, I'll try to climb it still.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun, man. It was cool to like work with. The crew was all so laid back and so excited about just being out there. But I think there was like 6 or 7 of them, like,
wow,
operating cameras. And it was so neat to see, like, you know, one guy was operating the boom while someone else had the screen in their hand. And then Dan was like talking them through it, and they were like taking practice swoops with the boom. And I was like, this is kind of cool. It's like they're figuring out the beta for like capturing this thing. And, you know, it was just neat to see like that realm of, you know, I'd never worked with like a huge film crew before.
Yeah.
That. And consequently, I like surprised myself by climbing the boulder a bunch of times that day.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I kind of was like, I don't know if I can do it again, but we'll see. And I think my first try got a flapper on like one of my fingers and like tore like a whole pad off, and was like, oh, that's not a good sign.
Yikes.
Like, told you I might not be able to do it. But then I proceeded to send it like 3 times or something, and then I was like starting from like a couple moves in, and I did it like 3 or 4 more times, and so that day changed my perspective on the climb a little bit. Because honestly, before that, I sort of was like, I think it might be V11, whatever that means, like, who cares? But it seemed really hard for me. And then after that day, I was like, it's probably not that hard. I shouldn't probably be able to do that that many times. And, you know, Dan kept being like, yeah, if you want to do it like one more time, we could like get this other shot. And you'll see in the video, they used all the shots, and like, you
cool.
can see.
I want to watch it again.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah. And so that video like spawned a couple other photographers reaching out to me to be like, can I go shoot that? And one day in particular, I went back with Jim Thornburg, and he wanted to shoot some photos of it.
No way.
Yeah, and he got some cool ones that day. And that day that I went with him. Do you think
we could share those?
Yeah, I know he has some published somewhere on his Instagram.
Okay.
I'm not certain if he like, and I think there's a picture in a magazine or something of that, Rock and Ice or something from years ago. But yeah, it was fun to go out there with him. And that day, somehow I was like screwing around. There was kind of this potential low start that I lucked at it. There's like an obvious like slot starting hold below where I originally started. And I kind of messed with the moves at first and was just like, it's just too hard. And like, it's already a giant boulder and I can't even do the top. So like, I'll just start here on this, like, reach as high as you can reach hold. And, but for whatever reason that day that I was shooting with Jim, I climbed it a few more times that day. I climbed the boulder and I figured out how to do the low start moves. I just like messed around a little bit and I was like, oh, it does go. And it was neat. It like re-sparked my motivation to like go back and do the climb from a lower start. And then that, I think I spent 3 more days going out there and trying this low start. I think every one of them was by myself. Wow. And then
it's pretty tall. How did you have enough pads?
I'm just not the smartest sometimes.
Okay.
And I might be overconfident sometimes in that realm. And so
you just didn't have enough pads, basically.
The way I looked at it was I've climbed it a whole bunch of times now. Yeah. I think if I get to this point, I won't fall. Yeah. And I would just carry pads out there, you know. Like most of the time you can drive to the top of the hill and you walk downhill like maybe like 8 minutes and then you're at the boulder.
No way.
And so it was not really a huge problem to carry tons of pads.
Okay. What an interesting setting. Like I would have, from the video, you just imagine like, oh, that was probably a trek to the top of this mountain.
Yeah, people ask me, how bad is that approach? I'm like, it's pretty easy actually, most of the time. But Yeah, there's actually, I think I posted a picture on my Instagram like many years ago of one of the days that I was out there by myself. And I set up my camera and took this shot of me trying to carry all my pads. It's a false picture because I didn't actually carry them all at one time. I like took 2 trips, but I have like, I don't know, I think I had 6 pads or something. And I'm like carrying like 2 double stacks on either arm and 1 on my back. And it's like, that's the perspective. Like that's one of the things about like going bouldering by myself that I really like being by myself and being alone at times. And like, I think I'm a little bit of an introverted person most of the time. So I recharge alone, and there's just no better way for me than climbing alone. And that's when I truly like just enjoy the moment to the fullest, and I can take my time and I can rest as long as I want. And I don't have any stressful feelings if I'm like climbing by myself typically. So, and if I could do that with a climb that like means a lot to me, then even better. And so that one was truly fitting. And I had dragged enough friends out there for the days of trying to do the original boulder that I ran out of belayers, if you will. and I didn't mind climbing by myself at all. So that process of doing the low start led to like what I think is the best day and the best moment of climbing that I've ever experienced in my life. And that,
wow,
it was a crazy day. It was New Year's Eve, and usually Tahoe's under snow, but it was just a dry winter and it hadn't really snowed yet too much. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna go try to do the thing. It's New Year's. I could like close out the year and do the thing. And I drove out there, and I had like a little Subaru Impreza. And
how did you fit 6 pads in a Subaru Impreza?
I didn't have 6 pads that day. I think I had 3 pads that day.
Okay.
maybe I brought 4. But at any rate, I usually can drive to the top of the road. But it was winter enough that like you get to this point where you turn left onto the dirt road and you drive to the top of the mountain, and that was snowy. So I got up there to the snow, and like I was like, oh, I got the Subaru, like it's not that deep, I'll try to make it. And I instantly got stuck like 10 feet into the road. And I was like, oh man, it sucks. And like, I kind of epicked. It probably took me like an hour to get the car out.
Oh man.
And I was like by myself. So I was like getting out to like push it. And like, I was doing all sorts of shenanigans, like trying to push the gas pedal with like a rock so then I could like push it at the same time. And I was like putting rocks under the tires, and it was an epic. So I finally got the car out, and I was like, well, I think I'm too tired to like go climbing now. And I got to walk like 2 miles now.
Yeah.
With my pads.
In the snow.
Yeah. It was probably only like a foot deep or something, but
that's significant.
In the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I literally sat there for a minute and was like, I had my little dog with me. I was like, what do you think, Kona? And, she was looking hopeful still. So I was like, you know what? It is still New Year's. Like, why not? I'm here. I already drove down here. And so I freaking strapped my pads together with like a strap, and I like drug them behind me in the snow so I didn't have to carry them. And I made the 2-mile walk. It was totally snowless up there. And I like sent the boulder that day. Wow. And there is a video that I posted of the like full send of the sit start.
Oh, sweet.
It's not as cool as the like video that Dane made, but it is like an uncut iPhone video of me like doing the thing.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I want to share that on Instagram if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah. And that was like the best moment of climbing for me, because it was like, man, I rose above like my initial feelings and like getting stuck, and that was one of those like power of the psych moments for me where I was like, you know what, like it is all about your perspective, and like what you produce and what you can like put out there is fully surrounded by like how do you feel in your head. So I went from kind of being like defeated feeling to being like, no, you could still do it. Like show up and try, man. And so like, what's the extra hike gonna do? And then it actually kind of sucked because like snow trudging was just not that rad. And especially on the way out, I was like, well, now I'm tired. Wish I didn't have to walk down. But it was pretty worth it too. So
Amazing. How much harder was the sit, you think? Did he put a B grade to it?
yeah, like suggested, like it might be 12-ish or something.
Okay.
I don't know, man. I just have no idea. Grades make no sense to me because I'll like flash a boulder that has the same grade as some that takes me like 5 or 6 days sometimes, and I just don't know. Like, there's too many factors, right?
Yeah, especially on that rock type, especially
Yeah.
on granite and technical rock. Like, conditions matter so much more.
Yeah.
Whether or not you find the tricks right away.
Yeah, whether I'm doing it, which usually is the case. Usually I'm doing it wrong for like days. I think my friend Ethan Pringle likes to say, it's usually about the beta. That's usually what makes or breaks the send. And like, I think I kind of can see what he's talking about. 'Cause
Smart guy.
Smart guy, yeah. And he's probably just done the same thing as me a lot. Where
Yeah.
It's like, cool, I just fell off that move for like 8 days. Like, I should have figured it out better.
Yeah. So I want to get to how you went from Leavenworth to Tahoe, and I guess just kind of like more broadly what your trajectory was from there to Tahoe, eventually to Salt Lake, and what led you to coaching. But a couple questions before we get into that. I'm curious, what was your gym climbing life like throughout all of these chapters? And like, how strong did you get before you dove into training? Were you training back then? Were you just climbing? Were you doing anything in the gym that we would recognize as training these days?
Yeah. Nope, I was not.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I gym climbed quite a bit that first year or two that I found it. And it was purely just like sessioning the boulders in the gym, climbing with mostly the Vertical World team kids and like a few other, this was, again, like 2002. So
Right.
there was significantly less climbers in the gym, and it was always kind of the same people. And so there was this kind of tight-knit community that, like, I knew everyone there, and we were truly just, like, sessioning the boulders. And this was, they were still taped back then, taped boulders on the wall. And a lot of just making up boulder problems and just not keeping up with the 14-year-old team kids. So and it was awesome to get to climb with some of those guys. I got to climb with Brian Boyko and Brian Hopkins, and those were kind of the like notable Vertical World boys that were, at the time they were like next level, fully capable of like winning nationals, whether they did or not. They were like that good.
Yeah.
And
I remember I worked at Western Washington's gym for a few years, and I remember setting routes for competitions, and Brian Hopkins would come to some of our competitions, and we just had the hardest time setting things hard enough for him.
Oh yeah.
You just do everything first try.
Yeah.
Luckily, he was the only one that did everything first try.
Then it's perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. That kid had just an unbelievable ability to like pinch blocks in an overhang. So Vertical World had this rad 55-degree wall that we would climb on a lot. And I would never send the boulders that he would make up and do, but it was fun to try. And so I don't know. I sessioned in the gym for a couple of years, and then I kind of like phased out of going at all. I think I got to, for again, whatever reason, and in my own mind, I was like, I think there's another way. I think I can train by climbing. I always said, like, I want to beat the system. And like, I would kind of train by just home exercises on the floor, and I would do my push-ups and sit-ups, and I would climb a lot of, volume days, and I would repeat boulder problems a lot because it was just so fun to me. It
Like
wasn't
ones you'd already done, you mean?
Yeah, and it wasn't like, I got to train, I need to go do the circuit. It was just like, yes, this is training to me, and like, oh, I love this boulder problem. I love being there. I love where it's at. I love the holds. the moves, whatever, I would be drawn to that and just go and climb them again. So a lot of like my favorite Leavenworth problems I've probably climbed like 50 to 100 times.
Wow.
And because some days I'd, go there and do it like 6 times in a row.
What are some of those?
I love that was problem. I've climbed that like 100 times. I love the Sleeping Lady. I've climbed that one like over 100 times for sure. That Musashi climb I've climbed a whole bunch of times.
Okay.
Those are probably the ones I've done the most.
I'll put these names and grades in the show notes for people that are listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those grades have evolved over the years. And the boulders have honestly changed a lot in Leavenworth. The rock there's kind of soft, and I think it's just wet in the northwest, and people climb there a lot when it's kind of damp. And it is granite, but I think it's like a sandstone-esque granite a lot of the time. And then some of the rock has been burned with, wildfires, and that makes it worse maybe. And
it seems like it gets sharper and more brittle from the fires.
Sure. Yeah, but every time I go back there, every year that I visit my homelands, I'm like amazed at how different a lot of the problems are. Yeah, I'll just be like, wow, that's just not even, it's like 100% different than like those early days.
So I attribute you, or I think of you so much as a first ascensionist just because of that first guidebook and seeing your name all over it. And, it's really interesting. Like, it seems like that's just where you were at that time, right? Like there weren't established boulders, so you went and made up your own. But it seems like you've carried or continued that same trajectory, and that's caused you to move around and continue to move to places, like once Leavenworth was kind of getting a little bit tapped, all of a sudden you were in Tahoe, and there's all these untapped, new zones and new boulders and things.
Yeah.
Was that by design? Like, did you continue to seek out the development? Did that become a significant part of climbing for you? And how important has that been versus just, I don't know.
It's interesting. I don't know. I don't think I was super motivated by like, I need to do first ascents. I need to find new things.
I guess that's what I'm getting to. I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I was projecting onto you this like endless seeking of the new, because you've just done so much development in all these different areas.
I think a lot of it has happened just by default, not by design. I don't know. I think that the friends that I was hanging out with and climbing with all kind of had that desire to seek and find new stuff, especially like Joel and Johnny in those early days. Like, they kind of only liked to climb new stuff. And I think part of that came from, they did not like to repeat boulders. And it just, I don't know, there's something about like seeking and finding and doing something new that is kind of addicting. So yes, I always loved to do that, and it's certainly has like a big presence in my life as a climber. But I didn't like leave Washington because I was running out of stuff to climb. And I'm like, I'm going to go to Tahoe because there's tons of development there. That happened just by like default. Yeah, at the time, like, my partner had got this job opportunity to go and work in the San Francisco area. And we were like happily Seattleites, essentially. We were living in Issaquah. But we also were like, oh man, maybe we should consider moving away from home. Like, we were born and raised here. Like, what, there's a big world out there. Like, let's go visit and see. And so we went to California to visit one weekend, and we were like, wow, it's like almost too nice. Worst case scenario, we can move back. Like, let's do it. And so I sold my business that I owned. I owned a window cleaning company in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did that for like 5 years or something. And we made the move to the Bay Area, and that, it opened huge doors to me as a climber, because I, again, just got to visit new to me climbing areas. So whether they're first ascents or 100th ascent, if it's like a new to me spot, I really like that, and I'm really motivated by that as a climber. And so moving to California and just being like, everything is new to me. I was a sales rep, so I got to drive around a lot to like visit all my accounts and stuff. And so I would, conveniently visit all the spots surrounding the Bay Area, like on my daily work trips or whatever. And I really got stoked to like visit the valley. So that Yosemite was like a place I'd never been before. And that was like huge for me as a climber, and just to like experience that and the history there. And I moved to California at the end of June in 2011. And my first day to Yosemite, we climbed Half Dome, my friend Jens and I. And
Jens Holstein?
Yeah, Jens Holstein.
Okay.
Yeah, good friend Jens. So he's been like a mentor to me in that whole like adventure climbing, further and bigger mentality. He would get me outside of my bouldering shoes, and I don't know, he's like one of my favorite people to go and do something big and adventurous with every year. I always try to do that.
Cool.
And naively, we were like, 12A, we could do that. He's been up there before. He's tried it. And like, we made it to the top. But that was like the most heinous day probably ever for climbing for me. And the next day was the worst day, like the worst feeling day as far as soreness and like workedness goes.
Wow.
That I've ever experienced. So yeah. Yeah, we like hiked down the next morning because we camped at the base after we climbed it. And it was an 18-hour day, tent to tent. So it was a long day. And it was epic, dude. Like the chains weren't up, or the cables weren't up at the top. So we like had to descend, like lifting them up, and like they're so heavy, dude. It's crazy.
Huh.
And that was at the end of the day, so I was already tired. And then we walked across snowfields in the dark to get back to the base of the cliff, and they were like steep ass snowbanks that like seemed to just drift off into like cliff land.
Probably did.
And they probably did, yeah. So it was kind of like a spooky end to the day. And we hiked down the next day, and Jens is like, we got to walk around Camp 4. You'll see all these cool boulders. And like, it was like July 5th, and it was like 100 degrees. And I remember just walking around Camp 4 being like, I can't walk around. I'm too tired. And like looking at like Midnight Lightning and Thriller and just being like, that just looks like hell right now. Like, I just don't even want to look at it.
Don't care. Too tired.
Which is like absurd because then further down the road, fast forward to fall, and I was like, oh my God, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like over and over and over again. Like every climb I saw was like, that's the coolest boulder I've ever seen. And I had some amazing valley experiences getting to like sample a lot of those boulders that are so famous and historic and just cool. They're just like nice. So and Yosemite's just full of everything I like about bouldering, about climbing. There's like giant boulders with super pretty walls and amazing holds and just clean cut everything. It's incredible. And consequently, like I had kind of been doing a bunch of manual labor, like with my window cleaning job for years, carrying ladders, climbing up and down ladders, like just kind of like doing work. And I kind of battled some injuries through that. I had like tendonitis and stuff from working and climbing. But that year I had sold my company and I had stopped manual laboring. So like, I never trained for climbing, but that was like serious training for climbing because when I stopped doing that, it was like this whole new me of like, I'm in a new spot. There's all these like new to be climbs. I'm like actually recovered and not like working my butt off all day, every day in a physical way. And I'd had so much inspiration that I just like couldn't stop. I couldn't stop going. And it was like a super dry winter. And so I had just like the best conditions imaginable and like way too much stoke and like freshness in my body. So I got to climb a whole bunch in the valley that year.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, some notable ones there too. A couple of the best list from Yosemite Valley.
What are some of those?
King Air is really neat to me. I like that one a lot.
I just saw some really good photos from John Glassberg.
Oh, yeah.
I think of him and Sean Rabitou doing that one.
Yeah,
That
one's
incredible.
It's stunning. It's cool. And that was a neat day. It was like a day right before a storm happened, and I was there by myself, and I literally saw one other person that day at that little zone. They were like walking around the LeConte boulder, and that was the only person I saw that day.
Wow.
And I got to, every day in the valley was like super magical amazingness. And a lot of them I spent by myself, actually. It was like winter. It was like weird, random midweek days I would go out there, and it was incredible. So, but King Air's one. That dogwood problem I liked a lot. And just for reference, to make the best of list, it doesn't have to be the best climb, but it has to be a neat climb that like stood out to me as this experience or this process that like maybe it was some little realization or something that I had along the way, but like that shapes to me like what's a great experience with a climb and what makes it like the best climb or whatever to me. So dogwood's cool, and then probably the most notable one is one called Too Big to Flail. No, Too Big to Fail, sorry. That one's actually called Too Big to Fail, not Flail.
Right, and then Flails and Bishop.
Flails and Bishop, yeah. So Too Big to Fail is like another legendary Randy Perot climb, and it's so beautiful. The only deterrent to that one is there's like one kind of gross hold on it. It didn't really bother me.
Like sharp or tweaky?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like this little crappy little crimp that's kind of like not uniform. It's kind of like a broken-ish hold. It's kind of gross, but and it's like way up there also. But that one was a notable climb to me. I had been like, I got to do that someday, and the year that I did it, I took a special trip to the valley like just to try to do that one. So it took me a few days, but I did it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Notable.
That's cool. I'll try to find photos of these to link in the show notes for people that are curious.
Yeah, I actually posted like a crappy iPhone video of me doing that.
Oh,
one.
sweet. Okay.
It's like not that cool, but you get the picture anyway.
Nice.
It was a neat setting of like, there's nobody there. You can see Kona just sitting there like watching.
And then you moved to Tahoe after that?
Yeah, I moved to Tahoe after that.
Okay.
My partner and I split up, and I was like kind of just lost in life for a minute and didn't really know what to do. And I actually went on a big, like when I lived in the Bay Area, I was visiting Tahoe, and that's how I got integrated with Dave Hatchett, who wrote the Tahoe guidebooks, and Joel Zaire was living in Reno, so I climbed with him a lot in the Tahoe arena. And then I kind of moved there just because I had nowhere else to go. Like moved there, but was living in a car.
Nice. Okay.
And then I took a big long road trip that year because I was like, I quit my job, my sales rep job, and I just was like, I got to get out of here and got to go be distracted by the world. And so I went on a big road trip. I went to Vegas, I went to Waco, I went to Joe's Valley. And then I came back to Tahoe and kind of like extended my road trip there. And then that is the time, because I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. That's when I found Coaching Climbing. I started a rock climbing team in Lake Tahoe at the Incline Village.
Okay.
Yeah, High Altitude Fitness is where I started. So I started a new team. Like there's no kids. There's like a couple kids climbing, but yeah, it was a small team. There's like 10 kids or something like that. And that was my first taste into like doing that thing. Yeah, and it was cool, man. Like, yeah, it felt kind of like climbing did, where as soon as I started doing it, I was like, this is it. Like,
wow,
this feels like the best thing I could be doing. So huge pay cut compared to previous lines of employment, but And I kind of was always hesitant to work at a climbing gym because it wasn't like my life, climbing gym life. But to be able to do this, coaching role was like, okay, I can maybe deal with it to do that. I think I professionally always wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
And I originally went to college to get my teaching degree, and then I kind of got scared and was like, what if I don't want to be a teacher?
Huh.
And so I bailed into majoring in exercise science.
Okay.
I just liked my exercise physiology class and was like, I don't know what to do. I'll do that. That's cool. And so that led me to being like a personal trainer for a little bit. Then I started a window cleaning company, obviously. And then to circle back around to being a coach and climbing or whatever was neat to think, I can kind of use my degree, I guess. At least I like have the knowledge of like, what does training mean? And like, what does it do, even though I don't do it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is really interesting. Did that start to influence your own climbing as well?
Coaching?
Yeah, and teaching kids how to train and using the exercise science, applying it to climbing.
Yeah. It influenced my climbing in some ways, and it maybe pushed me further into the realm of I want to beat the system so that I can...
I love this idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of silly, but I wanted to show the kids that I coached and worked with that there is another way to do this, and it's not like, I don't know, there's just not a specific way of like, if you train like this, it will produce this. My mentality and what I learned as just a climber in my early days is like, just if you are consistently doing it and you're consistently enjoying it, that will make you push yourself to a certain level, and by nature, like, improvement will come out of that. And so for me, I was always just too motivated to always be out there as much as I could. And I knew that, like, I'm not getting as strong as I possibly could by doing this, but I am having the most fun doing it. And I think I'm also improving by just logging more hours and by switching up the styles of, if I exclusively bouldered, I'd probably be limiting myself. If I exclusively rope climbed, I'd probably be limiting myself. And it's way more effective to train in the gym and target your weaknesses and put in the like month-long endeavor. But to me, it just wasn't, I don't know. I wanted there to be another path. I wanted to be able to rise above that expectation and be like, I could train in a different way and I'll still like improve. And along the way, I'll have a lot of fun doing it. And so that, to me, I climbed because it was so fun and like felt so good to just be outside and be in these cool spots and take 10 days to climb the thing that I wanted to do. Like, I don't need to be strong enough that I can do it in one session or whatever. And I think that's like what motivated me to not train, I guess, was that I was like, but it's the experience that matters. It's not the fact that I did this thing. Like, in some ways, I think that quick hit send is less of a rewarding experience because you don't have to go through the like, I don't know, setting the stage and the patience and the, true learning that goes into doing this or that. And yeah, sure, it's probably also fun to just send and be stronger than the climb every time. But I don't know. I sort of also just missed the boat on that. I thought that like, I didn't train when I was a kid. Like, it doesn't really matter. I'll just have fun. And that is kind of like BS. That might be like, if I could do it over again, I would maybe integrate some training into my like regime throughout my life. So that I could just have a better foundation of like overall body strength and kind of just, I don't know, it's nice. It's good to like tune yourself up, I think, every year So my mentality toward training has changed a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I had for
Yeah.
you. Like, what are some of those things that you wish you had done or would do differently if you could go back?
Yeah. Man, that's a tough question to answer because in most ways I'm like, I wouldn't change a thing. Like,
Yeah.
I would not trade the moments that I got to spend out there doing the thing that meant so much to me for the like training days that I could have got stronger or whatever. However, I do think that, like I just said, maybe spending a little bit of time every year, utilizing the downtimes and the off seasons better would probably be what I would change. Because, you know, living in the Northwest, it's like quite wet for a lot of the year. And I would just fight it, man. I would like, I'd be like, don't go to the gym. And I would probably log like maybe 5 or 10 days a year in the gym.
Wow.
On some of those, you know, like those years where I was sort of like opposed.
I mean, I've lived up there in the winters. Like, what did you do?
Just freaking not doing it smartly. I'd like go to Little Sigh and I'd go to the Equinox Wall and it was dry enough. And like,
yeah.
I would squeeze in those dry days in Index and, you know, secretly the best days of the year in Washington are in the middle of the winter.
Right.
There's always a week or two of like gloriousness.
That's why it's so hard to do a trip there to try to send anything hard.
Yeah, it is kind of.
You never know when that window's going to hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I would maybe try to integrate like at least 1 or 2 smaller blocks of like focused training if I could do it over again. And then I would also maybe spend a little bit more time trying to like perfect the art of projecting, whatever that means. I always have defaulted to like climbing is fun, and to me sending is fun. And, you know, that whole do something new every day produced a lot of days of climbing at like sub limit for me.
Okay.
So that's good and it's bad. It's like really paved a big foundation for me. Like my pyramid is like hugely filled out. I've climbed like hundreds of like, you know, grades that I can do of all the things. And so consequently, I'm not as good at like seeing through the things that mean a lot to me. I think in the past 6 years or so, I've taken on a couple projects, but literally 4. I've had 4 routes in my life that I was like, this is really important to me. Like, I will do this no matter how much it takes, and like fully dedicated to the cause. I think consequently all 4 of those routes, once they were this like mythical thing that meant way more to me, because of that, it like mentally blocked me into like spending way more time on any of them than like I could have done them more quickly had I been less in my head.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, it was cool because I was like so motivated by them, but I think that led to me just failing a lot, along with not training. Yeah, if I had trained more effectively, like also would have climbed them faster.
Okay.
So the trade-off is kind of interesting to consider because I'm also grateful for like, that was sweet to epic on that thing that was so cool to me. I'm talking about a real epic, kids. No, I know you like to say I epicked.
More than 2 weekends.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about, I fell off the last move 30 times. And that doesn't count the days that I wasn't getting to the last move.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. Even that's like not that epic, right? It's like a couple seasons or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. That's one of my biggest goals for this year, 2021. I make little goals also for myself. They're usually like pretty broad and like whatever, slightly like hippie-ish goals or something like that.
Okay. Do you have some examples?
Yeah, so like my big goals for this year were like be present and be like in this moment all the time, no matter what.
Oh, those are great.
Surrounding climbing and life, I think. That was like, you know, they carry over from like not just climbing goals, but they're just kind of like, this is my focus for the year or whatever. So that was one of them. And then the other one, climbing specific, was like enjoy, embrace, and like practice the art of projecting. So again, I was like, I want to like, I'm getting a little bit older, and there's like a couple routes that would be cool to do. And like, okay, I've tasted this experience projecting a few times. I don't always like it actually. But it is neat to see something through that means something to me. And I'm just not usually good at it. Usually I can hit this mark in my like process with something that's difficult for me where I will just struggle to see it through, man. And that
Is this mostly with sport climbs or also with boulders?
probably more with sport climbs, but I also just haven't been bouldering quite as much in the past 7 or 8 years or something like that. I still do it every year and, you know, seasonally, but it's somehow become a little bit less of my like focus as far as like pushing myself. I think part of that stems from like harder boulders are just kind of hard, man. Like, like they're just not always super pleasant. There's like smaller holds, and so like
Conditions become crucially important.
yeah, and skin, and I'm kind of heavier, and that just, I don't know, it makes it worse. I don't know. Those are just excuses, really. And I bet it would also change depending on where I was living, and
Yeah.
you know, I love bouldering, like without a doubt. It's still like, it's the most fun way to go climbing for me. But I do like not focus as much on it anymore. I still like to be able to go out and climb something that's kind of hard for me, but like I kind of have capped it at like V12 forever. I've like climbed some V13s or whatever, but like it's not I'm not like driven to like, I gotta do another one, man.
Okay.
Like, I think climbing's always been never about this grade. It's been about the climb. And so I usually I shy away from like wanting to do a number. And it's neat to do something challenging for myself, but that can be like V9, you know, even though I can climb harder than that in theory or whatever. Yeah, it's fascinating to me to see that, like, okay, for 16 years or whatever, I've been climbing like double-digit boulders or something like that, and I've climbed like hundreds of them, and I haven't really lost that. Even if I don't boulder that much, I think it's like a mental thing. I'm like, oh, like V11, I should be able to do that, and so I can do it because I believe I can do it. And that concept I've, you know, whatever, I've learned from my own experience. I've learned from like watching kids that I coach that I think that mental component, it weighs more heavily than we like think or than we give it credit for. So yeah, it's funny to like have that mindset of like, oh, I could probably do that. I've done it before, like hundreds of times, right?
Right.
And so am I actually like weaker than I used to be? Heck yeah. Am I a little bit more out of tune with bouldering than I used to be? Like for sure. But I'm also a better climber. I'm a smarter climber. I like I don't know. I have more understanding and more patience for like the process or whatever that means. And so that's part of it too. Experience over strength.
I want to dig into some questions about your coaching and things you've learned from your kids and some of the ways that you pass on all the stuff we've been talking about to your kids. But to kind of frame that, how did you come to Momentum, and who are some of the kids that you coached? Like, what are some of the names that most of us or a lot of us would recognize that have been on your teams?
Yeah. Oh man, that's quite the scape. Yeah, I ended up moving to Salt Lake City By default, again, I was in Tahoe. I was kind of like, I want more sport climbing at my fingertips. I felt sort of funny about the small community in Tahoe, and for whatever reason, I was just like uncomfortable there. And I think that I just have the tendency to do that sometimes. If I get uncomfortable with something, whatever it is, I can quickly be like, I need to change. I need to move. So I was kind of like not really sure what to do with myself, and I was thinking I was going to move back to Washington, back to my roots. And I was like, well, I'm closer to Utah right now, being in Lake Tahoe. And I was like, there's a few boulder problems there I would really like to do. And so before I move back to Washington, I'm going to go there on a trip and like do these things, try to do them. And one of them was a boulder problem that I had like theorized, and I had built this weird landing for like a previous year on that big road trip I went on. And
Where was this?
It's in Joe's Valley.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a climb that I finally ended up doing. I called it Lex Luthor.
Okay.
It's on the Superman boulder. It starts on Superman and climbs leftward, but it's becoming a notable climb in Joe's. People climb it now.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I'll try to find a video of it.
Yeah, they're out there. And so I came to Utah just on a climbing trip, and I was actually trying that Lex Luthor thingy, and I hurt my pinky really badly. I did something to a pinky tendon, which anytime someone hurts their pinky, I'm like, how did you do that? but I was one of them. And it wasn't that bad, but it was bad enough that I couldn't do that boulder. And so I was like, kind of like, well, shoot, is my trip over? Do I just bail? And then I thought, I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to try to rest and see if I can heal this thing and I can do this climb before I leave. So I had a bunch of time. I had enough money saved. So I was like, I'll just hang out for a little while. And I went back to Salt Lake City. I had some friends that lived there. And I was just hanging out for a few days, like trying to heal and walking around Little Cottonwood, looking at other boulders, and found another one there that I was like, I'm not leaving till I feel and I can do this. And so tooled around for like, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 days, where I was just like being in a new city to me, and like maybe even considering like, could I live here? And that week, Momentum happened to be opening their new Mill Creek at the time location. And I was just sitting in the park one day, literally just passing time, and was like, I wonder what's up with their youth climbing team. Like, I would like to coach climbing again. And so I went into the gym and I talked to my friend Stephen Jeffrey, who was like in their setting, even though that like the floor wasn't even laid yet. But he was in there setting routes, and he came down off the lift and he was like, oh, what's up, man? And like, I asked him about the team, and he was like, I'll put you in touch with Jeff Pedersen. He's the owner. He'll be psyched to talk to you. And so I met with Jeff, and he was like, yeah, man, we're actually losing a coach soon. Like, do you want to guest coach this week? And we'll like see if it's a good fit. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I guest coached for one day and thought, okay, I like this team, and like I could see doing this. And then I guest coached for like another day, and then like another week, and I didn't have anything else to do, so I was totally happy to like go to the gym and like integrate as this, like, I think I'm gonna do it. I think I would like to coach this team. And Jeff was still actually coaching at the time, and then they had another guy named Austin Lee coaching their younger kids. Austin now owns the Kaya company that most gyms use. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, he was like really into coaching and like all the data behind it. And he has a lot of like great energy that he brings to the coaching realm. So he was actually moving, and that's who I would maybe replace. And then quickly Jeff was like, dude, you got this. I'm going to step away because like momentum's growing. Like I can't coach the team anymore. And so I got to step into the head coach realm of like both teams, and among those ranks were like Dalton Bunker was on that older team, and Palmer Larson, and Nathanial Coleman, Ben Tresco, all these kids that were like next level, like they were like national competitors and like national finalists. So my original thought was like, I was pretty intimidated actually to step in and be like, dude, I don't know anything about comp climbing, like in the scheme of things.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
I knew a little bit, but I was like a rock climber through and through. I barely gym climbed. I knew about training, like the science behind it, not specifically toward climbing. And I just had a lot of love for climbing and for like what it did for me in my life. And I knew I liked coaching climbing. So it took me like a couple days to like integrate into those guys' world a little bit. Again, I was like, oh, I don't know what to, like, am I going to be able to teach them anything? And then I just was like, well, I'm here and I'm like so stoked on being in this role and being a coach. And I was like all time psyched. And I was like at the comps, I volunteered a lot. I like dove into it. And I learned pretty quick that I was like, at least my perspective and my experience as a climber is something that those kids haven't experienced or been exposed to quite as much. So like maybe I do have something to teach them.
Yeah.
And it was cool to go through a couple years worth of maybe not being sure of that, and then coming out on the other side and being like, I think I did like have something valuable to show them. Yeah. And I'm
smiling because, you know, of course, Nathanial Coleman's going to the Olympics. So
he is?
He turned out pretty well.
Yeah. He turned out really well. Yeah. It was really fun to like work with guys that are like next level.
Yeah.
That have like the gift and they've put in like the time to see that through, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really curious. I mean, thinking back on your own climbing and maybe wishing that you had trained during off seasons and made better use of that time, but then also, you know, having carried so many positives and benefits from this kind of pure, just like do what is exciting and what's fun, you know, having benefited yourself from that. How are you thinking about like paying that for, or I guess not currently, but at that time with Momentum, how are you paying those ideas forward to your kids, and how are you thinking about coaching them and training versus just like teaching them how to stay in love and fall deeper in love with the sport?
Yeah. I think I shied away from the training aspect a little bit and really tried to lead by example as far as this is this other side of climbing that, you know, it's not part of this competition realm or this gym climbing world. I don't like to be a pushy coach. I like to say, this is your journey. And this is something that you're going to have feelings for and about as an athlete, as a climber. I don't think there's a right way to do it. There's not like, you should climb like this. You need to climb outside to be that. You should train more than not. Like that to me is just kind of bogus, because it's everyone's different. Everyone's experience with any avenue of climbing is going to be and feel different to them. And so for me, as like, it's all about being out there and like this experience and just like whatever, like being and feeling like positive toward what I'm investing my time and energy into is just important to me. So if I could pass that mentality on, I thought that would carry over into anything, versus whether it be comp climbing, whether it be climbing outside, whether it be going to school well, or like working a job well. If we can like shift our perspective into a spot that's like healthy, happy, positive, then like what can you produce from that? That was like a fascinating concept to me that coaching really made me think about and consider and like dive into myself and want to like share that with people. And so maybe that was like more my focus as a coach, was like developing, I guess, like at least trying to navigate life in a way that we could like learn and grow from, and myself included, you know, like if I don't have all the answers, I never did. And so trying to like navigate how everyone is different and how this is what you need or how this is what you want versus the person next to you. That's like an effective coach, I think. It's not like, here's the workout, you do these 5 things, all right, go forth. It's like so much deeper than that, and there's so many more layers to it based on like where are you at today, like how are you feeling today, how do you feel right now before this attempt, like how do you feel at the competition, how do you feel after the competition, like where is your motivation, like all those things are the bigger side of climbing that like don't make as much sense maybe as like do this many sets and reps, climb this grade, be fitter, you know, like
Yeah, the more intangibles.
Yeah, it's so not tangible, I think, the wide spectrum of climbing. You know. And so I don't know, like maybe it's just all like bogus and stuff, but maybe it should be more tangible. But
It seems like you've had an incredibly positive impact on these kids, so I wouldn't say that it's all bogus.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, maybe not all of it.
What are I am curious. I mean, we've had some conversations at the cliff about just the incredible differences you observe amongst different athletes, like how differently they train. Some kids that train multiple times every day, and then others that train day on, day off, and not that many hours, and getting the same results across the board. Are there any kind of deeper themes that you've noticed in the athletes that you've coached that have been the more successful or continued to improve over the years?
Yeah, there's certainly themes and patterns, and there's also just tons of diversity there. Again, everybody's different. Everyone's motivation is different, and just what we can produce as our output, I guess, as individuals is so different. So for some people, it's, train minimally, and I don't know how to scientifically explain, like, for instance, Nathanial tends to train, at least when I was coaching him, he tended to train a little bit less than most of his, like, other kids that he was, like, matched with or competing against. And he was really kind of aware of maybe what he was bringing to his training that day in a way that, like, I really admired. So I think climbers tend to, as a whole, tend to do too much all the time because we're, like, slightly neurotic about, I need to get the training in, I'm getting weaker. Even though it's like, no, you're not. You trained all last week. Like, it doesn't go away that fast. And maybe we, like, sandbag ourselves by doing that, you know, whatever. You can easily go into overtraining or undernourishing because you're just stoked to do so. And I thought that was really admirable to watch him as, like, this, you know, he's like a next level athlete. He's, like, far better than most people. And I think that a lot of his, like, superpowers come from, like, his headspace, and, like, his confidence and his just perception of, like, this is the moment and this is how I'm gonna manage it. I think he's better at that than most people that I've seen, especially in competition. Yeah. So I like admire the heck out of the fact that he can show up to the crag and maybe not put his shoes on that day because he's just not feeling it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And he's definitely changed and evolved as a climber, and his training is very different these days as he's going into the Olympics, and he has like taken on a new perspective on that. And it's really cool to see how it's working, to like, I love like paying attention to the way that people climb, that especially ones that I get to work with, and to try to observe and like figure out like what are they like bringing to their performance on the wall. Their everything from their upbringing, from their life to the like baggage that they carry. Like, how does that translate to what we do on the wall? And that's, again, it's different for everybody, but he's a special athlete for sure. And like, the complete opposite was coaching Dalton Bunker, who started as a rock climber. He then entered the realm of competition climbing as like a far less experienced climber and like whatever comp athlete than those other guys, but also had just his own like very deep intrinsic motivation to climb and to always improve for himself, whatever that meant. So his climbing and approach was just way different than most people's, where he was like climbing 17 days in a row.
Whoa.
And he was, he was really good at it, because he'd like go to American Fork and try his project like twice, and then that would be his climbing day. And then like the next day or that night, he'd like come to the gym and like go to practice and like train super hard and do all the exercises that I was like, you guys should do this. And way different than like Nathaniel, who would like come to practice and then rest the next day, and then come to practice and then rest for 2 days. So I think for me, I was like, man, maybe we should all rest a lot more, because like he's doing it. But I was more like the Dalton, and we would both kind of fuel each other's like motivation to climb more by being like, yeah, dude, I've been 19 days on. What about you?
Yeah, I have tape on all my fingers.
Yeah.
No more skin.
No, I would try to stay above the line, like climb every day, but in that Dalton fashion of like, I did a lot of go out to Little Cottonwood, make 2 trips with the pads, wrap down the boulder, clean it up, chalk it up, maybe do a move on the top rope, and then do the boulder, and then reverse. 2 trips, pads back down. Like, I barely climbed, but I climb every day.
I have noticed that like the people that climb a lot, it is these like really focused, quick missions.
Yeah.
I haven't met many people that climb really high frequency and just like thrash themselves, climbing tons of stuff all the time. With you meet those people, but those people usually aren't the ones that are climbing really hard.
Yeah,
they're kind of just like spinning their wheels in the mud.
Or they're 17.
True. Here, let's pause for a sec. It's getting hot. It's getting like distractingly hot. Might be a little noisy, but screw it.
Pause. We'll survive.
That is a lot noisier. Oh well, I'll figure it out with editing.
Yeah, can you do that? Can you edit some sounds out?
You can, yeah. It's amazing what you can do. I've gotten a lot craftier with the editing.
Yeah, I mean, it's admirable that you can run this show out of your van, your van house.
It's pretty simple, man. This is it. Yeah, I mean, you could take that thing anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that feels so nice.
That's nicer.
Wow.
Sending breeze.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's see here. I got quite a few listener questions for you, actually.
Oh, yeah?
And we've covered quite a few of them just in our, taking the listeners through the journey of your climbing.
Listeners know who I am?
They do.
I was kind of like, I bet I'm the least famous
I don't think
climber
so.
that you've ever interviewed.
No way. No.
I'm like just random dude.
I've had a lot of dark horses on the podcast, and they're always some of my favorites because it's harder to learn about people like you over the internet. There's just not as much of your life available to us, and it's
yeah, kind of.
this is fun.
along the lines of just whatever, beating the system. I always was like, I'm never going to have an 8A page. I don't like to talk about my accomplishments. And again, that was just stemming from like, it's the experience that matters to me. And like, who am I trying to impress? Like, this isn't my job. Like, it doesn't matter what I climbed. Like, why would anyone even care?
That is, I mean, you've mentioned that a few times now, the beating the system thing. Like, what does that mean to you? I get it, but I want to hear you elaborate.
Oh man, that means a lot to me. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just like not the normal path, right? So the normal path maybe is like train, get stronger, be better, climb the thing faster. But I think you miss out on a lot of chances to climb the thing because you're in the gym instead. And then you're resting for a day after the gym sesh. And then, yeah, maybe you climb the thing in less days, but maybe I climbed it first because I was out there for 10 days just trying it while you were getting strong enough to do it. And so my beating the system, quote unquote, is just like I don't know. It's mostly just fun to kind of be like, yeah, there's this other way, and I'm not the strongest, like not even close. I'm like not strong, actually. I just try more than most people. And I've exercised patience and the power of the psych, you know?
Yeah, I love that idea.
I do kind of train now sometimes, so I'm pretty stoked on taking that on a little bit.
I'm gonna shut the main door.
Oh, for just
We can leave
this
the-
is serious talk here.
Well, there's like a leaf blower in the distance.
Oh,
that
yeah.
you can hear. Yeah, that's
You're more sensitive to it than I.
This is a good compromise. Yeah, what are some of the training things that you have integrated?
Yeah, so I always shied away from training traditionally, in the traditional sense, because I wanted to have more energy for climbing outside. Every time I would dabble in training, I would probably go a little too hard, too fast, and then I'd be so sore for like a week that I would just not be able to climb. And
Gotcha.
it's funny because you talk to these like, you know, World Cup or like serious competition athletes, and some of them say the complete opposite. They're like, I don't like to climb outside because it thrashes my skin, and then I'm like wrecked for a week and I can't train.
Right.
And I'm like the total opposite. I'm like, dude, I trained once and then I couldn't walk normal for like a week and my core hurt too badly. And so whatever, I would still go climbing, but it just didn't feel as nice. But there was this like insanely important route to me that I wanted to do that, you know, it was legendary route for me because I saw a video of it on like it was on that Momentum Video magazine site that Mike Call used to run.
Nice.
And I saw this video years ago. I still live in Washington, and I was like, dang, that's next level. Like, what if I could climb 514 someday? That would be sick.
What's the climb?
It's called the All Around Routine. It's in Ibex, and I loved the story of it. I loved why it was named that. I loved what it looked like, and it was this like like 514. That's not in the cards for me at the time. And then when I moved to Utah, I was like, dude, I live close to these two things that were legendarily like, someday I want to at least try that. The other climb was the Bleeding in Mill Creek Canyon. But it was kind of funny. I like literally woke up one day and was like, whoa, those two climbs are in the state. Like I could go try them. And so I did. I like took that all around routine thing on, and it's like a shenanigans climb. It's 2 pitches off the ground where it starts.
Okay.
It's in the middle of nowhere. Like Ibex is a 3-hour drive from Salt Lake. And then it's this monster, like 40-meter long climb. There's 9 bolts on it. So
Whoa.
Chris Lindener and Tim Kemple bolted it a long time ago. Maybe they bolted it in like 2005 or something. I think Chris Linder made the first ascent in 2007 or something like that. It was on the cover of a climbing magazine in 2008. So it was somewhere in that realm. But But I went out there one random November day and I was like, okay, I heard you got to go to the top. You got to wrap in. You got to like check it out, put the draws on it. And I just love that kind of adventure stuff. So I went out there by myself. I like went to the top. I found the rappels down to like get to the anchor. It's kind of scary, actually.
I bet.
And then I actually got stuck on the wall that day and almost like epicked. Yeah, it was scary, man, because I wrapped in with like an ATC, and in hindsight now I'm like, I would never do that this way again.
What would you do instead?
I would fix the rope on the anchor and I would wrap in on a single line and I would jug back out and rappel.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just didn't know what I was doing enough. And I was dumb, and I wrapped on an ATC with 2 rope strands, and it was so steep after you wrap over the lip that I like clipped both of my rope ends through the draw, and then I like did that again like a few times throughout just to like directional myself through, and I was just gripped the whole time. I was like, dude, I'm way up here. This is so scary. And it's just got an eerie thing about it. I was out there by myself. There literally wasn't anyone else out there. And I got down to the anchor and I couldn't pull the rope. It was stuck.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I was like, uh-oh. And I was like considering free soloing out. I was considering down free soloing. I was like stuck. And then eventually I tied myself to one end of the rope, and the belay is kind of on this ledge, and I just started like jumping off the ledge with the rope, and I could pull it like an inch at a time. Yeah, with like my full body weight. And I finally got it down, and it was, oh man, it was such a relief. It was cool. So that was my first taste with the all-around routine, and I was like, that's a special climb. I want to try it. And anyway, I'm getting too carried away with this long story, but I really wanted to do the route. At the time, only Chris Lindner had done the first ascent, and then Ethan Pringle did the second ascent. I think years later, something like that. And then Jonathan Segrist did the third ascent. So and that was it. So I was like, dude, I'm gonna invest. I'm gonna be the first non-pro climber to do this, and I'm gonna be the oldest person to do this route. And to me, that was just a fun game, fun element. And it's hard for me, especially like it took me a lot of work, and so I tried it for 2 full seasons, like a spring and a fall. Couldn't do it, not even really close. And then I was like, I gotta train. Like, I'm gonna try it and train, do this route. So I took on training for that off season, and I did a lot. I kept a training journal. That was kind of the first time I had really like committed to a training cycle, and I did all sorts of stuff. Like, I was a coach. I knew what to do. I didn't consult with someone. I was just like, I think I should do this, 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 and this. And I didn't break my stride with climbing, and I trained a lot. I lifted. I did a lot of gym route climbing. I did some gym boulder climbing. And I just climbed outside like I normally would. So I was looking back at my training journal through that period the other day, and I was like, I cannot believe I did that.
Like the amount, the volume?
Like the volume, and just, I was like, how was I that strong compared to today? And so that was neat to see, and I was so glad that I had kept track of it, to look back, and because I kind of forgot. I was like, I didn't remember that I was doing that much.
It's amazing how quickly you can forget all that stuff. Yeah,
Totally.
You don't keep notes.
And so I came back to the route. I trained. I'm gonna do it, and I didn't quite do it that season. I got really close, but I didn't get to try it very much that season. I think I only got to try it 10 attempts that whole fall season, because it was just logistically challenging. I had trouble finding belayers. I had like my own crazy like headspace issues, and I like really was struggling with my self-worth and stuff, and I that made it harder for me to ask someone to go out there with me and like belay me on this thing that took a lot of effort and stuff. Is the weirdest thing. I look back, I'm like, why was I even considering that? Anyway, that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it feels like a big ask to have someone come out and support you on something that's logistically challenging when you're not a pro climber, when it's, you know, it's not a new route, it's already been done. You feel the insignificance of it all a little bit more acutely.
No. First non-pro ascent, bro. Don't discredit. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that was
FNPA.
That was an interesting aspect for me to like, whatever, another crux to add to like this route that was really difficult for me. And then, but I learned a lot from that training cycle, and I looked back over it and I was like, okay, what did I do wrong? What could I do better? What do I need to do next year to like do this thing? So I did another training cycle, and I narrowed my focus a lot, and I totally axed climbing on rocks.
Whoa.
So the first time in my life, first time in like, whatever, that was at the time, I guess, I'd been climbing for like 16 years. And that was the first time I ever was like, I'm not going to go rock climbing. I'm just not gonna. And I think I went like 5 or 6 times or something throughout 2 months. But that was like, dude, like the least I had ever rock climbed. And it was the most I had ever like gym climbed. And I completely changed my focus for that cycle. And I did a very dedicated hangboard routine that wasn't extremely gnarly. It was like a pretty progressive repeater program. So I guess what I recognized of like, what I need to do this route is either be a little bit stronger or a little bit more fit. The way that it breaks down is, for me, it was a 75 move long, like 13A-ish climb or something, maybe 12D once you'd climb it like a whole bunch of times. That was like sort of restful, to this like kind of funny knee bar rest that wasn't like amazing, but it's pretty good. That was like the first time in my life that I was like, I'm wearing a knee pad, I don't care, I need it. And now that's changed, and I will gladly wear a knee pad. but at the time that was notable. And then so from that point, then it's a 30 move long sequence of like, I don't know, I was like, it's either like 2 V8s or like a 30 move long V10 or something for me. That's what it felt like. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
But that was notable, you know, a 30 move long hard sequence. There's a good hold in the middle of that, but I couldn't rest there because I felt like I was too tall. Like,
whoa, okay.
My foot was like too high. And so ultimately I decided like, I need to not stop there. I need to just chalk my hands once and keep going. So that was what made me think I need a little more like endurance, finger endurance, or I need to be way stronger so that this like boulder problem at the top is not hard for me. So I shifted my focus into like do fingerboard repeaters and just boulder as much as I can. Because if I don't need to do any route climbing. Like I recognized that like more power is better and strength is going to help me more, and I can get fit in like 2 weeks on just like whatever, climbing routes.
Yeah.
So my plan that season was like dedicate to this training program, don't rock climb for 2 months, boulder and set routes as much as possible, fingerboard. And I did a couple lifts.
Okay.
Yeah. Not much. So training program was like way simpler that season.
That is really simple.
Yeah. And then I finished those 2 months, and I was kind of like, okay, I planned to be able to start trying it in April. And it was a weird year. It was kind of too cold that season. And so I was like waiting for it to warm up. And I strategically was like exiting my job kind of at Momentum at the time. I was like stepping down as the head coach, I like passed that off to my really good friend Palmer, who coached alongside me for many years. And it was just that chapter of life that I was like, I have to leave that right now, for a number of reasons. But I worked that into this plan to like climb this rock climb. So I like was exiting my job. I had all this free time. I came to St. George to like integrate back into rock climbing while I waited for the route to be warm enough to try. And I remember my first day back in the rock after training a bunch and not rock climbing, and I was like, maybe that didn't work. I feel awful. Like I had no flow on the rocks, and I was like, what am I even doing? Like, I think I like fell on the warm-up that day or something.
Whoa.
And was like,
what a trip.
Yeah, I was like, dang, that's not good. and then I think by my like second or third day on rock that week, I had a moment of like, I was climbing up the Black and Tan Crag, which is kind of hard and bouldery and like little holds, and I was on this route that I like grabbed these two nasty holds, and I was like, I can't move, but wow, it feels like I can hold on forever. And that was like the moment that I was like, I think the training did work. And then a couple more days of climbing, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm definitely stronger than I've ever been before, which was cool because I was not young and I felt stronger than I had ever felt before.
How old were you at the time?
This was in 2019.
Okay.
So
like 36?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ish,
yeah.
I think I was trying to send the route before my 36th birthday.
Okay.
And then I didn't. But I did it shortly after. Yeah.
Did you get the FNPA, first non-pro ascent?
So in my effort to try to do the thing and like whatever, con people into going to try it with me, I went through like, all my team kids by nature.
Oh, damn.
Because to me that was like awesome to share that with them and to like whatever, they knew what to do, they knew the ways, but like to show them that like this is like what I'm doing for like my whatever, this means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Like, will you be like a part of that process with me? It was super like probably way more special like for me to share those moments with them than it was for them. But you never know. I don't know.
I'm sure it left an impression. I'm sure it did.
Yeah. So I conned Palmer into going out there a lot with me. I conned Dalton into going out there a couple times with me, and he's just a lot better. So he actually did the route. But Dalton's kind of a pro.
Yeah.
So like whether you consider him that or not, does he get paid to rock climb? No, but he's like kind of a pro. And so I kind of was like, well, I still maybe got the first non-pro ascent, and I at least got the oldest
there
ascent.
You go.
And no one else has tried it since then. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So I kind of wondered, I thought this would be the season that people would like take it on, and like I was like, everyone's gonna do it this year. And everyone meaning like team kids that I coach that are now like team men. Yeah. Yeah, or women. I don't know if any of the women would have taken that one on yet, but soon. But I did think that some of my good friends would have been like, "This, let's go do that thing." Whatever. It's an amazing climb. It's for sure the coolest thing that I'll ever climb in my life.
Damn.
Yeah, to me.
Wow, that is one hell of a statement right there.
Yeah, well, dude, it's the all-around routine, which, for reference, Chris Lindner said in that old video, like, my dad was a competitive gymnast, and the goal was to have the all-around routine, to be exceptional in every event in gymnastics, right? And he said the route has everything. It's got big runouts, it's got endurance, it's got power endurance, it's got this long section at the top that's hard, you mantle the cliff and you like top out, it's got every type of hold imaginable. There's even a crazy hand jam that you like at least my beta was like slam the hand jam and then like walk my feet up, and I had a knee bar against my arm that was in the hand jam.
Whoa.
To clip a draw. And then you like proceed into the hardness or whatever. But it's got all the things, and it's just weird. It's in a weird spot. It's like really unique rock, and the holds are all just like really cool and different. And oh man, it's like I get like emotional thinking about it.
You can hear it in your voice, and
Yeah.
you're definitely selling it. There might be some more Ascents after this.
There might
comes
be.
out.
Yeah, we'll see. I left draws on the crux.
Nice.
Don't try it without going to the top and wrapping in. So another fun story is that no one that I took out there, including myself, made it to the top before going to the top to wrap in and like find the holds.
Wow.
And I had even gone to the top and like chalked it up and tried moves, and then I still couldn't make it to the top for my first few efforts. Except for Nathanial made it to the top without going to the top. Yeah, he actually like flashed the boulders.
Wow.
He like took in the middle of it, but he like flashed the 2 boulders. And I was like, well, you could certainly do it. So yeah, that was notable that he made it through. He got to the top, and he didn't send, but he took the victory whip just for fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So in that old video of Chris, he jumped off the top. And
Okay.
that sort of set the stage of like, I got to do that
Nice.
also.
Yeah, 9 bolts in 40 meters.
Yeah.
That's pretty spicy.
They weren't generous. I think that they were just trying to make, just keep it this really neat. And
That's cool.
first section that's easier climbing is like quite spaced. And then as you get into the crux, it's not like absurdly run out. It's like normal run out.
Okay.
It's not like nearly as bad as like the Black Bean in Sayus, where you climb through the middle part and you're just like, I'm literally 25 feet above the last boulder.
Boy.
Yeah, it's different than that, but it's like appropriately bolted. And I thought it was like the coolest thing ever, like that. Just added goodness to me.
Well, that's amazing, man. Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah. Fun story.
I'm gonna have to
I had to train.
dig up the old video and see if I can share that with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a cool moment.
Okay, let's dive into. I'll just pick like 3 of these questions because
Yeah,
we're kind of getting on in time here. But we've definitely covered some of these. I apologize for people that submitted questions if we don't get to everything. Let's do this one. This is a question from Nolen. How does Kyle balance his performance in sport climbing versus bouldering?
I don't think I consciously do that, to be honest.
That's what That's what it sounds like from this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely just go with the flow a lot of the time, and I sort of wait for these moments that whatever I find a climb that I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Sometimes it's years in the making, I guess. So for instance, the all-around routine was years in the making. For Golden, for a moment up at the cathedral, that was years in the making. I was
really?
Yeah. I was like, I know I want to do that someday. And so, like, for reference, Golden, I knew I always wanted to do it, but I also knew it was going to be like a challenge for me. And I had these other 2 routes that I really wanted to do. And I thought, I don't know how to project well enough to like have more than one at a time. And so maybe I'm learning how to do that better, and I should get better at that, like diversifying and having multiple things that I'm like invested in. But for whatever reason, I was like, I'm going to send this one first, and then I want to send that one first, and then I'll try Golden. So it worked out that was finally this year. Wahoo. But yeah, those types of climbs were like years in the making. We're like, oh, I was inspired by that a long time ago, and I just patiently waited till it was the right time to like take it on or whatever.
Do you think at all about like maintaining your bouldering strength or anything when you're invested in a sport climbing project?
Yeah, a little bit now. And maybe that process with the all-around routine kind of brought that aspect back into the light for me, where I was like, I do need to be X level of strong for me to climb these routes that are difficult for me. And it's easy to like, once you go into sport climbing project mode for me, I just slowly like lose strength and fitness until I either stop trying it or I do it. I do think that I would like to find a better balance between sort of training through the process of like doing these things. And I guess like normally I'm not of the mindset of I want to perform right now in any realm, you know, like I think that happens naturally for me where like I'm just out there doing the thing and like climbing on boulders or whatever because it's winter and I feel like I need to get stronger, so I'll climb on boulders. I kind of just listen to how I feel or whatever. I'm not like, all right, in the month of whatever, January through March, I will boulder this much, you know. I always have things that I'm like, I haven't done that, and that's cool to me. Like, I'll put that on the list, you know. These are the things I maybe want to try. But I don't, not as good at like, these are my goals. That's what I'm trying. I definitely more like go out there with my friends and like tool around. And then I usually find something that I'm like, oh, I like that a lot. I'd really like to see that one through.
Yeah.
And so this last winter was an example of that, like tail end of like COVID times. And I was kind of like vibed out by being around people, and the crags around St. George were kind of crowded. So I was like, I'll just go bouldering at these weird spots that like for sure nobody's going to. And I found one that I was like, ooh, I want to do that. So I kind of invested. It took me like 7 days or something to do that one. And that's like the perfect scenario for me, that like I was just out there like doing whatever because it was fun and in a cool spot. And then I found something that was motivating enough to me to be like, I'm going to come back and keep trying to do this. And this is like the perfect opportunity to practice projecting, which was my goal for the year. So I looked at that as like, this is my training for this route season that's coming up for me. And I need to get stronger, and this is the best and most fun way for me to do that. Just like go bouldering. I consequently found these boulders that were like really fingery and like really good training for the things that I was like excited to try this spring.
Nice.
And yeah, so for me, that's the perfect scenario of like, I didn't have to try. I didn't have this thing planned. I like found it, and the cards aligned where like the river is usually high enough that it was like in the way of this boulder problem that I liked, and it was low enough this year that I got to like climb on it. And the first couple days that I tried it, I like couldn't do the moves. So
well,
yeah, and that was like abnormal to me too. Like I normally won't try a boulder that I can't do all the moves on like in a day or something, because I just not good at projecting, I guess. I'll be like, that's too hard for me, I guess.
It's funny to hear you say that after all these stories of all these boulders where you just put in the time and chipped away until you got it done.
Yeah, I don't do that as well on boulders. I usually like get way too excited about something that is probably far below my limit of what I'm like fully capable of, but it's like maybe got consequence or something like that. So it's got like its own challenge involved that I don't know, like I again, like I got this power of the psych mentality of like, you know, if you follow your motivation and your like heart or whatever, as cheesy as that sounds, that's when you like, you know, rise to the occasion and do these things that are whatever, challenging or whatever, inspiring. And most of the time that I spend on boulders, it's like, this is so neat to me, I can't not do it. And it becomes less about being physically challenging for me and more about just, I can't help it. I like just go and do it. And yeah, I don't know. It's not like it's not something I usually like work on or am conscious of, if that makes sense. So I don't balance my performance. Really, I like really try to practice patience, and I try to just follow my intrinsic motivation, like wherever that is.
That's cool. I'm trying to learn. I'm like leaning a little bit more that direction. And I'm similar to you. I'm like hoping I can beat the system.
Yeah.
Because that approach is really fun, actually. And
Yeah.
it's nice I'm kind of letting go of this pressure for once of feeling like I have to check all the boxes. I have to do all the maintenance when I'm, when I'm not in a training phase. And I don't know. It doesn't really seem, I don't know how much it matters. Like I've seen talk to a lot of people doing this who just fully immerse themselves in what they're excited about for now. Don't worry about anything else. And they might drop a little bit, like if Ethan comes to mind, if he's sport climbing, he's not trying to maintain his bouldering power.
Yeah,
but it comes right back.
Yeah,
and
it does. Yeah.
Then he sends another V14 or whatever really quick. And it's like, okay.
Yeah,
that's
I don't
cool.
know. There's a lot of power to that, being in the moment mentality, I think. And it's easy to stress out about things as a climber that are like, why? Why would we stress about that? And it's easier said than done, but and I'm totally guilty of it, during certain periods of wherever my head is at, I can fully stress about stupid stuff that's totally outside of my control, like weather and time and, having a partner for the ideal day, or do I have to work the ideal day? All the stuff that's dude, why would you waste your time? But that's, one of the challenges, I guess.
I've got a question from Lena. This is kind of a more tangible, actionable one. What are Kyle's top 3 footwork drills for coaching big or small kidlets?
Kidlets. It's a good word.
It is.
Oh, man. Footwork drills.
Yeah. Do any come to mind?
I like the beanbag on the foot drill, where you just kind of traverse the wall or something with a beanbag on one of your feet or both of your feet.
I've never tried that.
Yeah, it really forces you to move slower and to set your feet on the holds rather than kick them on. So the easy answer is the silent foot drill, I don't want to hear your feet touching the wall. This is kind of an extension of that.
Is that something that even someone as good as Nathanial would still do or benefit from, or is this for younger, newer climbers?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have him put the beanbags on his feet.
Do a run and jump with a beanbag on his foot.
Maybe that. That's more Nathaniel Steve. Partly I wouldn't have him do that because he's one of the most technically sound climbers.
Okay.
Unless, I don't know. So the other major footwork drill that I think is awesome is nothing super special other than climbing on volumes on a less steep wall. With not great footholds and just kind of closer to no hands climbing than not. And so being able to set little comp simulation type problems and things that really force you to kind of generate all of your movement and your balance from the midsection of your body. I think if you can learn how to do that, then that transfers into climbing on steeper angles and other walls as well. And it really takes you away from being able to pull through things. So for me, that type of drill is invaluable for any type of climber, really. That doesn't necessarily tailor toward newer climbers or less experienced climbers. It's kind of definitely helps the newer climber for sure, because it's totally new and different to them. But just understanding how to angle your feet on a less good foothold and how to fully have your weight on your feet on things that are kind of hard to trust, that seems to work a lot better for me than don't make noise with your feet. Again, repetition helps a lot with stuff like footwork drills. Do you always have to be conscious of it? Not necessarily.
What do you mean?
You don't always have to be paying special attention to how are you using your feet.
Okay.
I think repetition and more moves means more practice on that. And so the more times you set your foot on a hold and use it to generate your movement or to hold your body into the wall, the more masterful of that skill you're going to become. and it's not as scientific as we, want it to be sometimes. It's not like
That's interesting. Yeah.
you need to do X number of reps of this exercise. Maybe like having some level of awareness and a reminder of that when you're practicing is helpful for sure. But utilizing like little footwork drills in your warm-up is like really helpful for me, I think. So when you're doing these easy climbs that are far below your limit, that's when you like don't make noise with your feet. Set them on perfectly. Climb perfectly. Repeat it perfectly. Those are like really good, at least from what I've observed, like footwork drills or whatever. Also climbing boulders with 1 foot. If you're a little bit of a more advanced climber, that's like really good for your, not just footwork, but like learning how to move and learning how to like be more dynamic. And it usually forces you to cut your feet, which is something that, not everyone can benefit from that. The average new gym bro like might not need to climb 1-footed. But if you're like kind of technically good at climbing, like that's an amazingly helpful drill.
Yeah. Maybe like the granite technician trad climber needs to go into the gym and climb 1-footed.
Yeah, I need to climb 1-footed. I like to have my feet on the wall.
Cool. Yeah, Tyson shared that one too. That's something
nice.
That's something I've still, I mean, I haven't been climbing in a gym much in the last year, but that's something I'm really excited to try.
Yeah. It's cool, man.
I think that'd be helpful.
It's kind of like a combo of sort of campusing and it's just a lot more fun and like probably less impactful and dangerous, honestly.
Than campusing?
Yeah. Like campus boarding is just, it obviously has its time and its place for some climbers, but it's like also just kind of dangerous depending on who you are.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. Final listener question. We have to acknowledge your voice.
Do we?
In this conversation. So I have my own questions about this, but I'll just ask this question from Evan. So Evan, is a buddy of ours that's been hanging out at the Wailing Wall, and he writes, when is Kyle, and then in parentheses, the voice, going to get his side hustle going as a reader of children's books or guided meditation?
Yeah, I get that a lot. So a lot of, like I work at a restaurant 2 days a week, and a lot of the people that I like wait on will comment on like, you have a great radio voice. And like, yeah, I've got that all my life. It's kind of funny because I've always hated hearing my voice. And I think,
really?
Yeah, I just think it's like monotone and just, everybody doesn't like hearing their voice. I don't think.
It is really strange at first. You do get used to it.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
You must be a master at this point.
Eventually, it's really odd how, like, at first when you hear your voice, it sounds weird to you and it's surprising. Eventually, it sounds exactly the same as when you hear yourself talk. Huh. Yeah.
That is interesting.
You get used to it, and there's some adjustment that's made, and then it just is, it's totally normal.
Huh. Yeah, I was just going to comment on that.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's way different than what I hear.
Yeah.
When I hear it played back to me. But whatever, other people like it. So I've embraced that now. And I have thought about, I've looked into being like, maybe I should record audiobooks or something. Because at the very least, I could probably help people fall asleep.
I was joking at the cliff that I would love to hear a rendition of A River Runs Through It read by Kyle O'Meara, and I would listen to it every night before bed.
See, my point exactly.
But okay, so this is my question. We were talking about this at the Crag, and I was curious, like, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I'm always so impressed by the narrators that can capture different characters of voice by tweaking their voice. And they're not like, it's the ones that are really subtle.
Sure.
You know that a different person is talking in the book that they're reading just with these subtle shifts. They're not overdoing it.
Sure.
Do you think you could do the different voices?
Oh, I think I could do it.
Okay.
Yeah. It would maybe take me some practice, but I think I could do it. Yeah. I have like a little bit of voice inflection.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned, I wonder if you'd be willing to share this. You mentioned growing up and having a collection of stuffed animals.
Yeah.
And how your parents would always, as you're an adult now, they try to get you to reenact the different voices that you would use for your different stuffed animal characters.
Yeah, see, I practiced at an early age, man. This is part of my destiny, maybe, as an audiobook reader.
Exactly.
I had all these character voices.
Can you recall any of those voices? Would you be willing to share any?
Can think about it, man. I honestly haven't even tried for like so many years.
Your voice is probably a lot deeper now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And honestly, I don't know. Maybe I'm too embarrassed to even try to do that.
I'm totally putting you on the spot, so that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Okay.
I might not be able to do it.
We'll leave it at that. But I do want to say that Evan, so his wife actually is an author of children's books.
Oh, cool.
And my new goal is to get permission from her to get one of her books, preferably a bedtime story, and have you read it, and then just put that out on the podcast.
Oh, dude, this could be the start.
As a completely solo episode for people to
This could be the start.
Yeah.
For me to practice my character voices.
I'm going to make this happen. If you guys want Kyle to read you a bedtime story on the podcast, let us know. We'll make it happen.
What if you get an overwhelming no response?
I just won't tell you.
Okay. I'll just never hear from you again. I guess nobody wanted the story.
I don't think that's going to happen, though. Okay. Final question from me. I think we should probably wrap up here. What is something that you have been feeling especially grateful for lately?
Oh, man.
What comes to mind?
Big question. Man, I'm pretty grateful for a lot of things, honestly. This has been like a pretty... Man, 2020 was a weird year, right? Like I don't know. I like epicked pretty hard in 2020 with myself and just where I was at with my own like headspace and like I have made a lot of big changes and big growth in that realm in 2021. So for the past few months, I've been just very, very much more self-aware and way more like practicing a lot more self-love and self-care and self-reflection that I really just struggled to even try to do that for the past couple of years. Not because I didn't want to, I just literally felt like I couldn't do it. And so I think anyone that maybe struggles with headspace can understand or relate to that, to where your rational mind can say, this isn't real, that's a lie, but I can't not feel that way, whatever it is. And I just I had like some deep struggles in that realm. So this year it's been cool, man, to kind of recenter into feeling like I am maybe like a good force, like the version of me that I looked, that a lot of people see me in, whatever. Like I think, at least I've been told, like I have a reputation of like being positive and having like good energy. And for a couple of years, I was like, I hated hearing that because I felt so different than that.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was weird. It was just like this nasty cycle that I was in. And so I don't know exactly what happened. I think I just like admitted to myself one day that I couldn't do it by myself and that I'm not able to like wait for this to like change. And I don't know why, but that started this ball rolling in like a neat direction to where I had a lot of like, I just recognized that like, no, those are just thoughts. They're not me. And like, I am still that person that like I always wanted to be, or that other people saw me as, or whatever. And so I've been like overwhelmed for the last 3 months with just like feelings of just a lot of good in my life, and sharing these like rad experiences and these rad moments with like good friends at the Crag this season. And like, I really feel like I've circled back around to this kind of childlike love that I had for climbing all my life, that I'm out here for this reason, for these reasons, for these experiences. And I think it just got a little bit muddled for a couple of years to where it was this thing that I always like used as kind of an escape or a distraction or a place of like safety, that I could be out there by myself and I could whatever, be feeling anything, but like this was my safe escape. And that started to like wear off, and I was like still going climbing. I still enjoyed it. I still had amazing moments here and there, but I would have a lot of moments of like, this doesn't feel the way that I like it to feel, the way that I'm used to it feeling, if that makes sense. And I think everybody kind of goes through those ebbs and flows of motivation or stoke or whatever for climbing specifically. My struggle was like life-based, and climbing was like should have been the mask for that, and it wasn't feeling that way. So to circle back to this year, and I had a couple like just like magical moments where I was like climbing up this wall and just like feeling just so much like love for like the sport, for the activity, for the people I get to share it with, for like the fact that I get to be a coach or like a mentor. Like it's like overwhelming to me to like feel that.
Thanks for sharing that, man. Yeah. That's cool. It's been really fun to get to know you at the cliff this year, and I can see that sparkle again in your eyes. And it's fun to meet people that I run into, years in the past, or like you, I've seen you in the guidebook in Leavenworth, as a new climber with all this excitement and curiosity about the sport myself, and to just meet you now and realize like, oh yeah, this guy is such a lifer. Like you still seem as excited as I remember being when I was 18 or 19 years old, running around the forest in Leavenworth looking for these boulders.
Yeah, it is true, man. That's the ultimate gift. Or remember that day we were walking out there talking about our superpowers as climbers? Were you there that day?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about like what's our superpower as climbers, and mine, I identified, or I think it is that I just like love everything about, like I just have a lot of love in my heart, my life, for other people, for like what climbing's like offered to me, and like just the moments that I've experienced in pursuit of climbing. I just love everything about it. And so that, I think, to be able to still feel that much love and adoration for climbing for those moments is like, it feels like a gift for me to be 18 years in and to be like, I just still can't quite get enough of it. Yeah, and to be able to share that with other people and friends or kids that I get to coach is like, that feels more meaningful and more like just a better like investment of like me and my energy than it does to like invest in trying to climb harder for me or whatever like that. Again, it's the experience that matters, and that we get to like share that with people that's like the magical thing about climbing, I think. Not to be like too romantic about it or anything, but like that's just part of what I love about it,
Yeah. Amazing, man. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for sharing all your stories, and thanks for sitting down. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is my debut with my
pleasure.
radio voice, so see how it goes.
Here's to a bright future.
If I'm coherent enough to, pass.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Steven. It's been super fun hanging with you from after all those years. We met in Bishop many years ago. I think we decided it was 2012 or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Many years on from then.
Yeah.
I feel the same age.
Same. So do I.
Yeah.
I feel younger, if anything. It's weird.
Yeah. Me too, for the most part, except for some days.
Well, here's to another decade.
Yes.
Of climbing and fun.
Cheers indeed.
Cheers, man.
Move with the rhythm. Shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. Sing 1, 2, 3, 4. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.